Dear participants, we extend a warm welcome to all of you to the roundtable discussion of the topic Crossing the Ukrainian Border, Challenges and Perspectives, organized by the charitable foundation Right to Protection with generous support and assistance of the UN Refugee Agency and the ACCESS Consortium. I'm honored to serve as the moderator for this event, and my name is Ksenia Getz, the advocacy coordinator of the Right to Protection Charitable Foundation. We would like to inform our English-speaking attendees that simultaneous translation services are available throughout the event. For online participants, we kindly request you to utilize the translation feature by clicking on the globe icon located beneath your screen. Please note that from this point onwards, we will be conducting the event in Ukrainian.
Dear participants, our roundtable will last till 6 p.m. We'll have 4 panel discussions. In the first one, we'll talk about conditions of crossing for Ukrainian nationals and third country nationals. The second, risks of trafficking. Do we do enough at border points for prevention? Third panel is about border crossing. Children and people with disabilities is the most vulnerable ones. After the third panel, we'll have a small coffee break. And in the fourth panel, we'll talk about services and infrastructures at the current situation, next steps. Together with the colleagues of Right to Protection, we will present the results of this survey related to the border crossing. After each speaker's speech, there will be a small discussion. You'll be able to ask questions and get your answers. To take part in the discussion, I'd like participants just to raise your name like that, if you have a wish to present your speech, I will just understand that I need to pass the floor to you, like that. This will be the sign. After all discussions and speeches, we will have the concluding part with key ideas and recommendations formulated. Also, the informative event is hybrid, by the way. Part of our speakers and panelists will join us online, so please, dear participants, be careful with the time. For those people joining us online, for them, make it convenient to take part in the event. Okay, so I do hope that our cooperation will be really fruitful and really interesting. So we do start, and right now I pass the floor to Deputy President and Program Director of Right to Protection, Ms. Diya Kovalchuk. Thank you, Oksana. Thank you so much. Dear partners, dear colleagues, dear representatives of the state power bodies, we are really so happy that Right to Protection created this space today for us to talk, to discuss the border crossing issues. Why for us it's really so important that we raise the topic? Since 2014, our organization has worked a lot, and we were protecting the rights of IDPs. At the broad spectrum of issues, we've been there in East, we've monitored the situation at the BCPs. So our team in monitoring service, in particular, with more than 150 monitors working in communities and in the collective centers, namely at international border crossing points, they had an experience and understanding how to monitor the situation, how to help people, how to make people aware, bring this information, how can people protect their rights, actually, and, have this feeling of dignity. It's important for us that people so we can say that in 2022, more than 20 million people actually crossed the border. For people, when they cross the border, not to lose this dignity, to have access to rights. If their rights are violated, where to go, where to call, who will help to protect the rights in this case. And in fact, since the very first days, as executive or implementing partner of UNHCR, we've been there at international BCPs, and our monitors really helped a lot. We've seen a lot, they've seen a lot, and they referred our beneficiaries to our legal service for people in the most proper way to cross border and to get temporary protection in the EU countries or elsewhere. So I personally have experienced 2022, like more than 30 times I myself crossed Ukrainian-Polish border. I've seen less than Iran. I also witnessed these facts, like a family with 3 young children. They were staying for 3-4 hours without access to toilet, food or water, without explaining the reasons, like for additional examination or something like that. And our mission is to avoid these situations, mitigate those cases. So in Eastern BCPs, we've seen that the state can improve, actually, the conditions for border crossing and to ensure proper conditions for the border crossing at the same time. And we're pretty sure that, yeah, of course, international BCPs, it's a little bit different, but today we want to launch this discussion, discuss these painful spots that we still do have for those crossing the border. How can we improve the situation for people to stay humane, stay people, and for those who cross the border, for those who ensure the services you may actually be provided when you cross the border. Thank you so much for this support. I'm grateful to our partners for the support, UNHCR, and we have a chance to extend our activities. And of course, today, as an activist organization, we can talk of these painful spots and those issues, problematic issues that we have. And we're grateful to our ACCESS Consortium partners. Thank you for actually gathering us at this round table and giving us a chance to talk about important things. Thank you so much, Oksana. And I pass my floor to Karen Whiting, UNHCR Assistant Representative for Protection. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you very much to R2P for bringing us all together today. And I apologize, this will be the only session that is not in Ukrainian, despite what was indicated at the beginning. So I think from UNHCR's perspective, we look forward to a very rich discussion today, given the diversity of participants that we have here, both from civil society, but also from government entities. So I think since the 24th of February 2022, as mentioned earlier, millions of people have crossed the Ukrainian border, both to leave and to seek international protection, but also for those people who are returning home. And I think, the importance of ensuring dignified conditions, but also ensuring that people understand how and when they can cross borders is really important. And from a UNHCR perspective, that's first, so that people can seek international protection in line with, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, Ukrainian law, but also asylum law in the EU and in Moldova and in other countries, but also for those who wish to return home. And I think we saw last year an increase in people coming back to Ukraine in the spring and in the summer. And already I think we are now, certainly since March, seeing an increase in movements back into Ukraine. Certainly, I think April is a little bit special because of the holidays. But I think from UNHCR's perspective, we expect that there will continue to be a net inflow into Ukraine. And that's because we know that Ukrainians who are abroad, Ukrainian refugees, want to return home. So in UNHCR's intention surveys that we've conducted in EU member states and in Moldova, we know that overwhelmingly the majority of Ukrainians wish to return home, and a significant proportion of them, when we surveyed them in December and January of last year, about 20% said they intended to return back home in the next 3 months. And we will be conducting a new round of intention surveys in the course of the month of May. And we expect that the number who plan to return home in the next 3 months will increase. So I think our discussion is timely in order to ensure that the conditions and the information that people need in order to be able to return home, but also to seek safety are in place. So perhaps just briefly in terms of UNHCR's interventions, together with many of you who are here today, we began, and could you move to the next slide, please? Thank you. So since March of 2022, UNHCR began to increase our activities together with R2P, NICA, and the 10th of April at Ukraine's western and southern borders with EU member states and Moldova. So we currently deploy partners who conduct legal assistance, social assistance, and information provision at the border, with a particular focus on people who are particularly vulnerable, such as unaccompanied children, or people who don't have documents, with counseling and accompaniment and referral to protection services. We've also, together with these partners, and again, next slide, please, also sought, in collaboration with the State Border Guard Service and local authorities, to improve the conditions at borders. And I know that we will have a specific session on that later on today. But certainly a part of the work that we do with our partners is to make sure that the waiting conditions, but also the crossing conditions are appropriate. And certainly during the winter time, we know, particularly for people who had to wait long times, a place to go and to warm up or to be sheltered from rain or from snow was particularly important. And so we did erect a variety of tents and shelters in order to protect people from the elements. Some of them, as I'm sure our border guard friends will indicate, were more successful than others, but we hope that we'll be able to ensure that the structures that we erect are safe and secure moving forward. Next slide, please. We also erected latrines to improve the sanitary and hygiene conditions, and we continue to work with local authorities and State Border Guard services to ensure that those facilities are available to people, and so that they are safe and secure. And then finally, another important component of the assistance that we're providing together with many of you around the table is to increase people's access to information at the border. So information about the types of documents that they might need, but also information about where they might be able to obtain assistance for those who are unclear about the requirements or about what they can expect on the other side. And I think as returns increase, it will be really important that we're able to provide information about what people can expect in areas of return, so that for people who wish to do so and where it is safe to do so, they have the information that they need so that those returns can be sustainable. So, and then finally, perhaps, and I know we will also have some interventions from organizations for persons with disabilities today, also ensuring that the facilities at the border are accessible and inclusive of it all, so that everyone who wants to can either seek safety or return back to Ukraine. So perhaps with that, I will hand back over to the moderator. But again, from UNHCR's perspective, we really look forward to fruitful and lively discussions today about how we continue to work together at the border crossing points. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Karen.
Thank you. So in September 2022, since September 2022 to February 2023, all our partners together with UNHCR were monitoring the conditions of border crossing at 15 BCPs. Within this period, we fixed 713 declines at Shahini BCP, 17% and Porovna. Also, we can see that there is a trend that we have more refusals and declines since September. In September, we had 50% of all the declines. Therefore, the monitoring team tells that there is a trend to have fewer declines for border crossing for foreigners and Ukrainians both. So the reasons to decline for Ukrainians to cross the border, who will tell about this? Deputy Head of the Passport Work Department of the Border Control Organization of the Administration of the State Border Guard of Ukraine, Andriy Kuzmenko. He'll tell us more. Thank you. and good afternoon. First of all, I'd like to speak of the transfer declines, the dates that you mentioned. So we had the key changes in the border crossing rules, and key updates, and citizens of Ukraine, foreigners, and stateless persons who were moving through the border. So at night, we had these updates approved, and when they were crossing at night, not everything depends on us, let's say. What depended on us, on February 24th, at some moment, we didn't know what to do. It was a challenge for us as well then. But thanks to joint work of NGOs, CSOs, of course, backed with the government, thanks to all of us, on February 25th already, we managed to handle this situation. I won't tell you about the queues. You know what it is, because Шегині, Краківець, Ягодин, we had these queues to Lviv city, and we have like 25,000 people there, including foreigners and Ukrainians and children in the border crossing points. If we didn't make this decision at night, that kids and women, Ukrainian kids and women, to be allowed to cross without entering the database, and Polish, actually, those supported us, all 25,000 would be there at BCP, they would cross and nobody would do anything further. So what impacted this first? The full-scale invasion, of course, was the reason. And so when starting from the Kyiv itself, we had these blocked roads, congested roads, and 25th, 26th, February 25th, 26th, we had mostly people at BCPs, and the key challenges and queues we had on February 24th at night, and the rest of the days, like these were the hardest ones. We have two officers today with us who actually lived at border crossing points, and with their coordination, with their eyes and ears, and Igor Matveychuk, Oleg Kohtey, they actually coordinate it with the government. So they're responsible for southern and western direction, and they organize the border crossing. And not just the crossing itself, but everything that's in our mandate and beyond the mandate, we actually ensure that people and vehicles can cross the border. So just to say that only in the end of February and March, not even 2.5, 2.9 times more of the passenger turnover we had. So not thousands, but in average we had, if we take 2021, almost 2 million of crossing, but just in the end of February, start of March, we had almost 3 million crossings, border crossings. And that, out of these, 50%, just the Polish part of the border. Шегині, Краківець, the basic Rava-Ruska, the basic ones, basic roads, people go where it's more convenient for them. And also when it comes to border crossing itself, I'll just give you the figures. And in 2022, almost 35 million people crossed it. In 3 months of 2023, already 7.3 million people. So when it comes to the crossing procedure, as of April, May, the situation has stabilized. Many Ukrainian citizens, including our diplomatic officials, they started returning. Not just our diplomatic mission, but also the foreign diplomats as well. I mean, the employees of embassies, everybody started returning to Ukraine, and Starting from May, I guess, 2022, we already had this more stable border crossing procedure we had, but with the load mostly on the Polish part again. It was the key load. If we take the southern direction, just with the figures, not so huge, just 1.5 or 2 million people more, but take into consideration that in certain regions, we have only Starokozache, Reni, and Mogilев-Podolsky. I can't say these are big ones, big BCPs, but fully functioning, let's say. For these 3 BCPs, yes, there was like a huge load on them. The second factor for queues, especially the cargo transportation, so many border crossing points were closed. Russian, Belarusian part of the border, and also BCPs are closed at half of Moldovan part, where we have the Transnistrian segment. And take into consideration all these flows that we have, for example, in Estonia, coming to Estonia, to Vilnius, Riga, these went via Belarus previously. All these just changed the direction, and Yagodin, Ravaruska were used for that again. And as of now, I can tell you the queues in these BCPs for cargo vehicles, well, it's still critical for the cargo transport. Also, I want to tell you that queues for crossing. What also impacts these queues? The airlines and sea lines are closed, so no maritime or air transportation is available right now, unfortunately. As practice shows, we can say that seaports, they transported a lot actually previously. And when this load was transferred to light motor vehicles and cargo vehicles, our BCPs just were overloaded instantly and became overloaded. And it's really substantial. It's quite a critical load, I can say. Oh, what am I leading? So yes, the cargo congestion, it impacts the queues as well for people, because not always before the BCP, in front of the BCP, not always the roads are so wide, like in Boryspil with 3-4 lines. There's one line usually, and this line is congested with cargo vehicles and a lot of people who leave for the very first time abroad. They don't know what to do. They stand in the line where the cargo vehicles are, and sometimes 10, 12 hours for them to understand that they are in the wrong line and they're too far from the border still. So people just make mistakes, because of that. They're unexperienced in that matter. Also, regarding border crossing, I just want to... I have no presentation, just from the graph. For example, the passenger flow at Polish segment, 50% out of everything that crossed the border. At Moldovan segment, 13%, and the Romanian segment, 12%, Hungarian 12%, Slovak 6%. So as of now, it's still the same, and the same load, and the most... So people do pick mostly, and it's more popular direction, of course, the Polish segment.
With respect to when we reject people, we are not disallowing them to us. And as of today, how to put it, really? It's pretty popular issue for discussion, because when you have some restrictions, some constraints, some other people are doing their own business. When we limited the category who are studying in the universities, I'm talking about students immediately. just immediately in Kyiv only. For firms, for companies in Kyiv appeared, and they started producing documents, necessary documents for crossing the border. And in Poland, they say we have only 3,000 students, but immediately 2,000 students crossed the border into Poland. How it happened. And really, when we are talking about some categories, so situation just improved. Sometimes there are additional restrictions and people are complaining about it a lot. How to put it? Actually, not in May, but in beginning of April, some amendments were introduced in the legislation, and these amendments allowed, irrespective of the age, people with a disability, I mean with the special needs, but he says disability, just to allow them to help them, some relatives or people who are making special care, like visiting nurses or whatever. And it's not a critical category, but people with the disabilities, as he uses this term, not special needs. And in Uzhgorod city in Western Ukraine, and so just helper traveled with a son who was disabled, then and one more neighbor also was used as a helper for the disabled and disappeared abroad, decided not to return. So we identified 3 persons already. If you take into account 2022, when we are talking about border crossings, in 2022 we identified 3,800 documents that were forged, actually. Forged documents that allowed people to cross the border. For your understanding, just wanted to explain you that in 21, it was about 600, maybe 700 annually. And already 2023, so we managed to overcome old schemes, but the new schemes appear, and 230 just medical documents were forged, and people were trying to travel abroad, cross the border, and as well a medical document with respect to disability, so-called Group 3 disability, and as well documents for helpers. It has been mentioned already by Diya about complaints with respect to kids and children. This requires special discussion, actually. We have no response about this particular situation, but actually situation with children is pretty problematic. Beginning of March, it was a big issue. Father is serving in the armed forces or territorial defense. So actually everybody left. It was no possibility to have consensus with respect to leaving the country. Some amendments were introduced that allowed to create this just document, and the corresponding bodies have developed a form for preparing documents for living abroad. And then in some cases, unfortunately, there were complaints because some parents misused this situation. they had problem with getting consensus to take children abroad. They were arguing about it, but these people just used the situation for their own benefit, and they just simply managed to take children abroad, and they started accusing our border guards that they allowed the situation to happen. The rest of the situation we managed to handle. Sorry, I am not a professional presenter, so sorry for that. So thank you for attention. Thank you, Andrei, for the information. And our next issues, and just not only Ukrainian citizens are facing problems, just persons that are having special protection, persons without citizenship, they are facing difficulties as well, taking into account that these persons are actually taken care by UNHCR. So, and we would like to give the floor to Karen Whiting. She is representing UNHCR.
Karen, floor is yours.
Thank you very much. All right. So I think we've heard about the complexity of the situation at the border. And so I will take us a little bit through the situation for third country nationals. So next slide, please. So as I indicated to you earlier, as of March 2022, UNHCR and its partners scaled up our presence at the border with EU member states and Moldova. And we are currently present at 30 border crossing points, which you can see up there on the screen. As part of our border monitoring program, next slide, please. We have the following objectives. So to provide humanitarian protection support, as I indicated before, information, counseling, social accompaniment, and legal assistance with a particular focus on vulnerable persons. We also want to monitor the conditions of border crossing and to monitor the waiting conditions, as we just heard from the State Border Guard Service. With regards to what our monitors are doing, so in addition to the provision of support, they're also gathering some information as a result of the monitoring. And so we are systematically, based on a sampling method, conducting surveys at the border, both of people who are exiting or leaving Ukraine and those who are entering or returning to Ukraine. And so we use an electronic tool, and we have a systematic questionnaire that we ask to better understand where people are leaving from, where they are going to, whether or not they felt that they had sufficient information, what were their concerns either about leaving Ukraine or about returning to Ukraine, you know, whether or not they have an intention to return back, as well as their main needs. And so what I will do through the next couple of slides is to present to you the results of our surveys and of the presence of our partners at the border, particularly with regards to these non-Ukrainian nationals. So while we note that there was no sort of formal change in the legislation about exiting the border, we did see some changes in practice. So I think we recognize the incredible flexibility of the State Border Guard Service and of the government of Ukraine in enabling people to be able to seek safety, particularly in the initial months after the full-scale invasion after February. But we have seen some changes, particularly, I think, in practice since the summer of 2022. And so some of the people who we see having issues in order to exit Ukraine are the following categories. So third country nationals who have applied for asylum in Ukraine, but who do not have valid travel documents. So they may have an asylum seeker certificate, but they either have expired national passports or national travel documents, or simply do not have their own national travel documents. And that has created challenges for them to cross. We also see that refugees who have been recognized here in Ukraine or holders of complementary protection that has been granted here in Ukraine by the State Migration Service, but who do not have valid travel documents, again, are facing these challenges exiting Ukraine. Another category that faces challenges from time to time exiting Ukraine are people who are stateless or who have an undetermined nationality. So those are people who may have a statelessness determination procedure application pending, who again do not have valid travel documents. And of course, for stateless persons and for persons at undetermined nationality, documentation is at the heart of their problem. Without being recognized as a national of a particular state, it is often very challenging to have valid and recognized travel documents. Another category is third country nationals without valid travel documents, but who may have permanent or temporary residence here in Ukraine. So people who had been living in Ukraine for some time, but who lack a valid travel document, although they have proof, documentary proof of their legal residency here in Ukraine. And then finally, the final category is, again, third country nationals without a valid travel document, but who are members of a mixed family. So a Ukrainian married with someone of another nationality, such as nationals of the Russian Federation or nationals of Syria or other places. So those are some of the challenges. And I think rather than going into examples now, I think we would prefer that we maybe go into some of those examples during the discussion, but just to perhaps give you the overview. Then with regards to people having challenges to enter and to return to Ukraine, we've observed three categories through our monitoring. Those are stateless persons, again, so people with applications pending who do not have valid travel documents, recognized refugees and complementary protection holders who don't have travel documents again, or who may have expired documents. And then again, third country nationals, so foreigners who are married to or who are children of Ukrainian nationals, but who do not themselves have Ukrainian citizenship. And I think there, we're also, I think there the challenges, we recognize that, for Ukrainian nationals, the right to return is very clear. Not only in international law, so in particular Article 13 of the Universal Declaration on Human Rights, but also Ukrainian legislation itself recognizes the right of Ukrainian nationals to return. The question is, when they are not Ukrainian nationals, but may have lived their entire lives and have their entire families and community networks here, like stateless persons, or recognized refugees or holders of complementary protection, or people with very close family links. And I think that is a challenge that we would be interested in discussing with you today. And then finally, I think one of the things that we have begun to see, and we understand, of course, that states have the full right to control entry and exit from their borders, understanding their obligations under international law, in particular refugee law. But we have begun to observe through our protection monitors at the border that there seem to be tighter border controls for non-Ukrainians or third country nationals trying to enter the Schengen zone. And in particular, we see that in Hungary, but also in other countries. So we begin to see that it is becoming more challenging for these third country nationals potentially to enter. And so I think we would be interested in understanding whether or not this is something that others have observed as well, but also how do we ensure that people who wish to seek international protection in line with international refugee law, but also regional and national refugee instruments are able to do so while understanding the need also to, protect national security and to ensure that smuggling networks aren't, taking advantage of, what is a very significant humanitarian situation and where many countries have opened up their borders and been very generous in terms of registering refugee claims or claims for temporary protection. So I think those are some of the issues that we look forward to discussing with all of you in the rest of this session. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen.
Dear participants, let's start our discussion. You're welcome. In case you want, please raise your name tag and this Q&A. Andriy, you can speak up. I would like to welcome everybody. Can you hear me? I'm Andriy Khodak. Most of you know me. I am representing Secretariat of Ombudsman, head of Department of Monitoring and Observance of Equal Rights. I have no questions. I'll try to be brief as much as possible, because in case you will really give me the floor, I can speak the whole day. Border crossing issue. We started involved in this issue not immediately, but at some point we were providing consultations to Ukrainian citizens and third country residents who were trying to escape from war, and we started facing lots of problems. People were not really aware about their rights, not only about rights, but the duties as well, because the duty of man is to protect their own country. Full stop. I just want to thank Border Guard service at the beginning of war and during all this period when Ukrainians, and not only Ukrainians, were crossing the border, and they were providing all the necessary help. The issue of traveling, some natural persons without any documents and returning back these people, and this was not really envisaged in the law, and this was a novelty in our legislation, and it was necessary to save life and health and to avoid really problems at the border crossing points, including how these people without documents can go back to Ukraine. In cooperation with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, we managed to solve this issue, and life is much easier now for foreigners and for Ukrainians. And special issue that have been discussed here, conditions at the border crossing points. Probably it's an issue to be discussed separately, but Secretariat of Ombudsman was studying this issue in depth. So we had two applications from Ukrainian citizens, two complaints actually. They were complaining about border crossing procedure. And but this is really not the issue with respect to border crossing, and even not customs office, customs service office. But this is the issue to be solved by local authorities, where these border crossing points are located, because services, all the services, to make sure there is some heating and some food available. This is really the responsibility of local authorities, because all these border crossing points, this is the responsibility of the local authorities. And this is a separate issue. I have some notes here, and with respect to border guards, definitely everybody is having problems, for sure, but I would like to emphasize that for the last period of time, when we look at their activities, so we don't have any complaints. In case there are some complaints, please inform us, but we will be able to respond only in this case. And now, about border crossing by the foreigners, the third country nationals. There are some constraints established in the legislation. So there are constraints for Ukrainians to leave the country. It's not only about men. The latest constraints are with respect to civil servants, because there is some collision, some contradiction in the law. Because in case paragraph 2.1 is active, so it allows them to enter, to cross the border. But as of today, we are suggesting to amend legislation further in case we'll be able to overcome the situation, the contradiction in different articles of the law, we'll be able to overcome. People know their rights when they're crossing the border, but they have no clue about duties. There were people who were having some court proceedings, and they were not able to leave the country because the court have disallowed them to cross the border. And we explained this in case you have not solved all the issues after the court verdict, the court decision, you are not allowed to leave the country. And what else? I just wanted to draw your attention to one little detail. Actually, Lauren Whiting mentioned it, just when foreigners are entering the country or exiting the country, traveling out. As of today, we received about 10 complaints in our ombudsman office. And I just wanted to draw your attention. When we are talking about Russian Federation citizens, it is actually Russian Federation citizens are not able to enter the country without visa, because we have visa regime for them. But in case they have residential status in Ukraine, temporary residence, whatever, and they are allowed to enter the country. And we had cases that these citizens were entering the country without any obstacles. And yeah, we were getting complaints about violations of rights. In some cases, when we responded to the situation, this violation have been resolved. But I just wanted to draw your attention to a little detail about it when we are talking about entering Ukraine. There is another country, and we are talking about Polish border in particular. In case Polish bodyguards are not allowing citizen to Ukrainian border, this person won't be able even to cross the border at all. So we had such a complaints. We had complaint, but we figured out the situation was such that the citizen was not allowed to the border crossing point by Polish bodyguards, but this person complained with respect to Ukrainian border guards. We can discuss this issue the whole day, but I tried to talk about all the issues. In case you will have some questions to me, I'll be able to respond at any moment. But we need to cooperate. I just wanted to emphasize this. Our Ombudsman Office and NGOs, in case there are some violations when rights of Ukrainian citizens, persons without citizenship, or third parties, third country citizens. And definitely, in case of complaints, we'll respond to the situation. And we are talking about other governmental agencies Definitely, we need to solve all the issues in compliance with the legislation and to overcome all the contradictions in this legislation. When we're talking about border crossing by Ukrainian citizens and foreigners and persons without any citizenship. Thank you.
Дякую, пане Андрію.
Thank you, Andriy.
Олександра Журко.
Alexander Leshko.
Перепрошую, Журко.
No, Lukyanenko, sorry, it's going to be Lukyanenko.
Агенція ООН у справах біженців.
UNHCR. Thank you for your comments and responses and for very much detailed information. And question is to Border Guard Service. When we are talking about communication with your Polish colleagues, a lady have appealed. She is Russian citizen. She is having resident status in Ukraine. She lived in Ukraine until April 22 on regular basis for 25 years, and she traveled to Poland with 2 children. And now she wants to, and these children are Ukrainian citizens, and Polish border guards are not allowing her to go back. And she's having only this residential document in Ukraine and internal Russian Federation passport. Can you comment about it? How she should act? She says she is not able to deal with Russian embassy because she's kind of scared to deal with Russian embassy to get a Russian passport. And in general, what kind of advice you can provide? Let me comment about it. Taking into account that in Ukraine, Russian and Belarusian consulates and embassies are shut down in Ukraine, and we allow these people to travel in case their passports are actually not functioning already. They can travel outside Ukraine. You know, they can travel. They travel out of the country, and then they solve their own problems, and they are returning back. And in this case, they are using as a shield Ukrainian children who are Ukrainian citizens. And people with, we allow these persons to let them in. But in case this person is lacking any documents at all, or documents that are not really allowing, so internal Russian Federation passport is not allowed for traveling abroad. So we can understand Polish border guards. They allow to travel outside this danger of war. That's one thing. But getting back is entirely different subject matter. And when we can see that there are Ukrainian citizens, so actually we can take responsibility. So taking into account that children are Ukrainian citizens, our guys are letting these people in. But in other cases, we are probably supporting Polish side because some people, they are afraid to deal with Russian Federation. But there is no other way. Every person should have some document. And if you want to travel abroad, you need passport to travel abroad. It's pretty classical situation. It's global rules. And taking into account this and plus classical case that you can stay for 180 days or 90 days, whatever. There are certain rules. And what I want to add about it, when we are talking about strengthening control, that it's more rigid control of foreigners in the EU countries. Again, how to put it? So when people are facing some trouble, business starts developing pretty rapidly. And taking into account that there are many EU countries that are providing shelter and they are paying decent money to people and support money, and foreigners from migration risk countries, so they decided to utilize this situation to their advantage, taking into account that our universities sometimes not complying with the laws. They're getting certain so-called invitations. And the last situation was that 14 foreigners in Chisinau airport, they have landed, then traveled to Odessa, and then in 2 days, they appeared in Hungary, and they are asking for support because they're Ukrainian students running away from war.
So this is pretty like simple and it sounds primitive, but this is the new scheme that, it's the new scheme for, let's say, with the foreigners that we have right now. These schemes are emerging all the time. Okay, Daria Sidorenko has a question as well. Thank you so much. I represent the League of Strong Association. We work with people with disabilities. We had a case, third type of disability. He was not allowed to cross the border and explained it that he has the certificate and documents that he has a third type, but in the Schlag system, this disability is not seen. So is it legal to cancel this crossing? How many cases you had, like how to act in that kind of situation? Thank you for the question. If we can explain the Schlag system, these are the drivers of humanitarian vehicles, or if okay, I get it. He was coming as a driver of the vehicle. Okay, he was crossing as a driver. I guess no. If he was crossing the border as a person with disability, third type, but he had a license or pension license with a type of disability or other type of ID validating his disability, yes, he wasn't, he was refused illegally, but if he had this paper even without the photo, but someone just wrote it in hand without a stamp and just stating that there was a type of disability, nobody lets people cross with that, with a paper. Then it was okay. We need to know the situation, what kind of document he used. I guess it was the temporary certificate or temporary license, pension license, A5 format. Recently, we've if you give the specific information, we'll check that. Thank you. Yes, I will talk to you later. Okay, another situation may be paragraph 2.14, when person with disabilities representative of state power bodies in the list, in the recognized list, those who go to business trips, we may have this case. But as you mentioned, when we have person with disability and Schlag system, by the way, it's a slang name. Nobody understands what that is. Okay, so be specific. Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you. Okay, we have a question. Maria Senenka has a question, I guess. Yes, thank you so much. Thank you. I'm so grateful to the Right to Protection for organizing this important event and the chance to have this live, vibrant discussion, discuss the problems, those which emerge with the border crossing issues. I have another question of a different type. It relates to border crossing, but a little bit different category. Humanitarian workers and humanitarian personnel, international organization personnel, namely the non-governmental ones, NGOs. As you know, when the full-scale war started, like many consular missions and diplomatic embassies, so these were not functional, and those employees who had to come to Ukraine to start their work and take part in humanitarian response, they couldn't get in their countries. And I just want to mention that mostly it's about citizens of such states which are called migration risk countries, mostly these. They have certain expertise of humanitarian response, and if there was a war or certain other crisis or conflict, so they had problem with getting the visas. And then there was a presidential decree adopted on March 14th on temporary visa-free regime establishment, tasked to help humanitarian personnel for them to have this entry to Ukraine. But there was this problem, by the way, then for citizens of migration risk countries. In the presidential decree, there's nothing mentioned like which states, like all, it says basically. But the citizens of these countries, well, they had problems with entry then. Of course, not the vulnerable categories that mostly we talk about, but still, these are people who come to Ukraine to help our citizens, to help our civilians and communities. And it's really important. They do a lot of important job. And by the way, we had a survey among humanitarian age NGOs, and many of them confirmed that the employees they hired, those who had to come to Ukraine, they had those problems, by the way. They confirmed it. And today, so now on the basis of Parliamentary Committee on Social Policy, we established this working group that is checking the humanitarian aid legislation. And there is a subgroup handling this issue on the foreigners' entry, I mean the humanitarian personnel and volunteers. So we are drafting the amendments to this decree and other laws as well. But I really want to get Andrei and your colleagues, maybe you do have some ideas about it. And you may get some vision. Maybe you can advise whom to talk to, State Border Guard Service, maybe just to discuss our achievements and ideas. Okay, it's really simple here, I can tell you. In the decree that you mentioned, there is a statement, those who are invited by the government. It's a quote. So it was okay at first. It was fine. They had letters with them. We received information. In a year, everybody forgot. And the majority of those who are coming, they have nothing, no confirmation that they are coming here according to decree or the invitation, just the invitation of some NGO. In the decree, it's clearly stated, upon invitation of the government, and State Border Guard Service will do only one thing. If this person cannot enter on a general basis, if one doesn't have visa, then nobody will be allowed. Just they don't have invitations anymore. They come without invitations. Yeah. To BCPs. That's what I'm talking about. Thank you. I understand. So dozens, hundreds of NGOs we have in Ukraine right now from different countries. And of course, getting an invitation from the Cabinet of Ministers, for them, it's purely impossible. So we are designing the amendments right now. We're drafting those. So we'll be able, I guess, to discuss it later. Alexandra Lukyanenko, please. Alexandra, yes, colleagues, a lot of questions to you. I'm sorry, but upon the occasion, I'm doing that. So I'd like to ask about the category of persons that Karen mentioned. Third country citizens without any valid IDs to cross the border and respectively, they don't have a chance to leave Ukraine. And ask for international protection, let's say, yeah, in the neighboring countries. This is the first question. And the second one is for the same category, but foreigners who did not ask for international protection in Ukraine, but just stayed in Ukraine due to certain reason legally. But for example, their passport is expired, okay? And there is no diplomatic mission of their country here to extend the passport. What should these people do? Maybe some recommendations or vision, like, please. Thank you. Yeah, we've communicated so many times in those cases. Thank you. First of all, I'd like to say thank you for the communication. Since March 22, we've established this communication. I'm grateful for it. In all those cases, we've been trying to handle quickly, as quickly as we could, and if it actually depended on us, State Border Guard Service. Yeah, according to our mandate. Out of all cases we had, as a rule, the problem was not with the State Border Guard Service. but mostly our colleagues of Polish Border Watch, you remember the cases. Nigerian man was trying to get IDs in the embassy of Nigeria in Berlin. Yeah, you remember the case, huh? And the problem was there that, well, we had some good communication with the Polish border guard service, and they said just we won't allow him. And we even had options like his wife could go. In each of those cases, there's no basic rule. There's no let's say umbrella approach or blanket approach. We need to see what are the documents. Where is the embassy? Was he able to extend it? If maybe he could extend it, but he didn't, and maybe he violated the Ukrainian legislation with that. Access to databases today, just we can check whether it's legal. This is a comprehensive problem, multi-layered, but the person can use international protection anyway. And I know different decisions were made within scope of competence of our service, and just saying that this is really a global problem, it's purely individual. Maybe lack of communication, maybe a person wasn't able to explain what she has or he has, or maybe went to a wrong place. We had calls, I remember, from State Migration Service. They say, okay, we have a person of this country and he has the situation, what would you advise? They say, we have nothing to tell him, and we gave advice or vice versa. So first they offered the State Migration Service to handle the problems that they had, and then go to border. And of course, communication with our colleagues. Sometimes, yes, maybe we don't give a chance to person. I put that wrongly. If we know in advance what decision will be made, and we warn the person, and the person decides. If you want to go, just, try. But the case, the person refuses and just doesn't go. But says that the State Border Guard Service did not allow, even despite it was an individual decision. So maybe the algorithm doesn't work sometimes. Okay, I'll briefly comment. First of all, my gratitude for this two-way work, for this cohesion, because since April 2022, we've been actively cooperating with individual cases. Thank you so much. Did I hear it properly or correctly? If these are third country citizens, they don't have national documents, or these are expired, they still have right to leave Ukraine. But this is the issue of neighboring countries, if these allow. They have a right to leave. Well, we can't state it like that, yeah? At the level of representative meetings of the apparatus with the neighboring party, if there is a negotiation that the person leaves and they accept them, we give a chance for a person to go to where the diplomatic mission is. But when the neighboring party is against, tells us that, okay, we will not allow as well. So let's take even, we've checked the document given by UNHCR by Lidia Kuzmenko. She's not my relative. Okay. So the person got the document. The person was working here with half a year, just solving its problems. And the person thought like, oh, I need to go, but the document expired. And Lydia explained that she was obliged to come to you, get the new one or something like that. A lot of these people, like, they get it, then nobody touches them. The migration service, please do not touch them. And they just, think, I need to go abroad. And they think about documents, but nobody thinks of expiration of, these become invalid. We have this situation as well. It's important what the purpose is, why the person is going there. Temporary protection, or one wants to get another protection, I don't know, another status. I don't know. This is, it's purely individual, 100% individual. It's an individual approach. We have to study the case. Thank you. And we have a question from online participants as well. Halina Mysakova, Social Protection Fund for People with Disabilities from Lviv. What documents can be used by people who require prosthetics What conditions are that for those who wants to cross the border with prosthetics? What is category? Yeah, those who require prosthetics or the prosthetic experts for them to cross the border. Ukrainians, if they can cross the border. All the professions, all the categories, well, we can't consider all of these, but for the martial law period, if I'm not mistaken, I can't tell you what decree that is, but we have a lot of professions and titles which got the immunity, not just the people, but the professions and titles. If this title is like under immunity and the person has a document, it's like a special registration list, we call it, like something like that. This person can actually go to a business trip without problems. But such category as prosthetic expert or specialist is not there. Okay, prosthetics expert, this category is not there anyway. Yeah, that's all I can say. There is no such separate category as prosthetics experts. Thank you. And we have Alexandra Lukyanenko and then Oksana Babic. Okay, just Oksana. Okay, great. Again, I'll use the opportunity to ask a question. It's to colleagues from the service, maybe not to you, but just for discussion. We mentioned today this category as refugees who get a refugee status or additional protection in Ukraine. They left with a simplified procedure together with Ukrainians, and they don't have travel documents to return. And they face the issue that they can't cross the border. Sometimes Ukrainians, sometimes the Polish colleagues, may refuse because they don't have travel documents. Is this again the issue of, it's about individual coordination of specific cases, because we know that the Migration Service opinion is that, okay, they left within the simplified procedure, maybe they have a right to turn with the same procedure, simplified one. Maybe you think you think that some amendments should be initiated for the legislation. Just a comment. I want to comment on that for this category of people. Okay, can you clarify? Okay, those refugees who left, Ukrainian refugees who left abroad, or like, no, citizens of other states, third country citizens who got the refugee status or like additional protection status here. Okay, look, coming back to the issue, if they came to Ukraine, to the BCP, I mean, we accept those people, we let them cross. There are such issues or not in issues. There's legislation, Article 14, the law on border control. It starts with the word refusal, but paragraph 6 tells that the State of Border Guard Service has a right to, when there are humanitarian issues or international commitments related to security, for failure to meet one of the conditions, to let foreigners come to Ukrainian territory, passport or other document that gives right to it. This is one of the conditions to cross. If the person comes to BCP, of course, not instantly, not with the bouquet of flowers. We check who issued the document. If we confirm that yes, we make a decision, we let people go. It may take 2-3 hours. Yeah. For example, a person comes at 1 a.m. at night. You can't call anybody, you can't check it because it's night time. For example, they may stay in the car, we offer this, or stay in a shelter if we can offer a tent. They're waiting, these people, okay? So after we confirm, after we validate the documents, we let people just move freely. I'll add that according to the law of Ukraine on refugees and people requiring extra protection, Articles 14-15, they have the same rights as Ukrainian citizens. That's it. It tells clearly. So thank you. Thank you so much for this conclusion, let's say. Just to add, right now, we have this sort of a problem. the governmental decree, according to governmental decree, we closed the BCPs at Ukrainian Belarusian and Ukrainian Russian segments. But for Ukrainian citizens, we have a right to pass them, to let them go. And many Ukrainian citizens who are under occupation, those who are fleeing out of those territories due to various reasons, maybe they destroyed their documents. We will not, okay, we're not blaming anyone for this, but they come. And the same procedure, and we face it, the key thing, Bativsk Volyn region, the key one, Domanova, Pokrovka, Sumy region. So 3 BCPs where people mostly go, where we have convenient routes for them. And there we face Ukrainian citizens, and with State Migration Service together with Security Service, National Police. Yeah, it takes sometimes even like 5-6 hours, but we identified that this is Ukrainian citizen. And even if one comes without documents and we establish his citizenship, there's not a problem. There is a procedure when a foreigner comes, okay, with a certain status in Ukraine that one received. Yes, we check that as well. But at night, well, you have to understand that nobody is gonna answer our calls at nighttime. Okay, colleagues, I offer us to finish this panel discussion. I'll just use my moderator's right. So we also have to generate some recommendations and conclusions. I have a question to your service. After all this like wave of forced evacuation for Ukrainian citizens who left abroad, after those queues, huge, long queues, you know, painful ones, what are the lessons learned by the State Border Guard Service? And in your opinion, what are the ways, how can we optimize the queues? Minimize them, open maybe new BCPs, like electronic queues to be implemented. Okay, what are the ways to optimize the border crossing procedure by Ukrainian citizens, third country citizens, to cross the border for them, you know, quickly, effectively, and not losing their dignity at the same time? Just allow me. Okay, the lessons learned. Yeah, all these lessons, you know, I can say that I was even making these notes all the time with those lessons. So the lesson number 1, by the way, in 2012, I had this lesson learned during Euro 2012. It was a little bit different, more positive, with a positive vibe. It was really, yeah, because 1.5 hours after the match, you know, the flow of transport moving to the border, and we were like, whoa, because the police tells like, okay, guys, you have a huge flow of cars. We had like an hour and a half, not to make any congestions, not to destroy people's impression from Ukraine. This was the first lesson. Other lessons were there as well, and I was personally ready. So we knew, let's say, we already knew what congestion is, border congestion is. The law of Ukrainian border control gives us specific duties when we can simplify the formalities, and we implemented it instantly when we had this problem a year ago. Unfortunately, we still can't count how many women and children were there within the first 3 weeks. Since February 24th till March 15th, we had 2 waves, the biggest one. In one day, we managed to officially approximately 119,000 in the Western segment. You know, it's just in one day. There are no technologies, no templates. The technologies were not able to handle that, I guess. But what's the lesson? First, we stepped away together with our colleagues, our neighbors, I mean, we stepped away from our negotiations and agreements, bilateral agreements on the category. So everybody who was walking there at BCPs, we let them cross the border. We started working 24 hours, you know, no shifts. We stepped away from the principle of this classification for trains, you know, for the railway BCPs, when in cargo BCPs like Volodymyr-Volynskyi and even Verkhrata, passengers were coming through these, you know, from hub in Lviv. within trains, thanks to great communication. Look at Zaliznytsia and yeah, their colleagues. Communication with humanitarian hubs, with you, of course, and many, many others, and many other NGOs and government. With volunteers, we managed to do it properly, to direct flows from Lviv, to disperse them, you know, the trains and buses where we could accept people in advance. We could, you know, like accept so many people as we needed with enough employees, and we did it fast. This lesson is important as well. Proper communication, less communication, like 2, 3 segments of those people who actually handle those important issues, just redistributing the flows. That's what we did. Some organizations started emerging after March 15, but we like already overcome those 2 waves, you know. And we asked the border guard service where to put the this bio toilet, the tent, the 15th kilometer of queue, or 20th, or like where exactly at BCP. We have to count it. We were like engineers, 40 bathrooms there, 20 bathrooms there. Yes, this is a lesson as well. And it tells us you have to be ready for that all the time. And let's say have a reserve, a stock, you know, of those places where people can get warm, mother and child rooms, as we call it. And we had to give even our premises, you know, and passport control for women to like feed their kids or to bring them some boiled water, you know, at least to, okay, sometimes there was a need to cut the cord and sterilize the cord, umbilical cord. You know, it was like, it was cold, it was horrible, it was such a stress, but we had various cases. People with disabilities, prams, you know, forming the groups. And yeah, we couldn't even imagine like how it should be. We didn't get that picture in our mind, like should be where. We had to break those columns in parts. We now learn the lessons, and right now we have already a schedule, a plan. Not to forget how it should be. And for certain BCPs, we still have the trainings, you know, on algorithms of actions, and state emergency service is there as well, modeling the situation, simulating that. That's a lesson. Yes. As Andriy said, definitely people were not well informed about it. Maybe some people didn't know the rules on how to cross. A lot they didn't know what to do even abroad, where they're going. Nobody knew. They just wanted to go to the border, and then they never thought.
In case they knew in advance, and the phone numbers, who can meet them, what kind of people will meet them. So information support is extremely important element, is extremely important part of this activities. People should be ready to do this. What else? Too straightforward legislation. Yeah. As of February 24th, paragraph 2.1 was not there. And these changes and amendments were introduced, and we had substantial changes in the legislation. Now our legislation with respect to BCP is entirely different, and now we were dealing, before that we were dealing with COVID issues as well, and now we are studying not only medical documents but other documents as well. So our legislation have to be upgraded and developed and amended all the time. So a lot of issues are hidden in the question, the objective of your trip. And so grounds for traveling. So to check the whole history of the issue, what this person will do before and after and whatever. That's not an easy piece of cake. This is pretty difficult stuff. I would like to add Oleg Kukhty. And there is one very important aspect. The whole infrastructure at the border have not been developed enough. The roads in Odessa region. So So one line, one road. And when the grain have been exported via this, all the seaports were shut down. And so, and there were no development, for example, to deal with the trucks, to make sure, like, at least more sophisticated road system, whatever, and hubs for trucks is not there, was not there, and it looked like catastrophic development. To get around the trucks, you're not only violating the traffic rules, and in this area, no places to stop by, no toilets, no medical support, and this affected the situation. And really, all the BCPs built already in 1990s, and no service zones, whatever. So, and people were expecting it will happen sometime, it will be developed sometime later. But still, almost no changes as of today. Thank you. Oh, let me add a little bit, if you don't mind. I was overseeing this long lines of cars and whatever. People with the disabilities, they go without waiting in line. And it specifies then in the border crossing point, but it starts very late. But the queue, this line starts very much earlier, before that. And so at this point, a person with a disability is not authorized to go without waiting in line. This issue can be regulated, that no complaints, and to prevent these complaints, whatever, from other people as well. We understand that with the disabilities, so legislation permits them, but only at a limited place. So there simply it's only a few meters the zone of crossing the border. And thank you for responding to all our questions. And let's respond to our next panel discussion. And we are talking the risks of the trafficking in persons. And are we doing enough to overcome and prevent trafficking in persons? And we are giving the floor to Irina Terenko. She's an expert in these issues. Thank you for having me. And because I have limited time, so situation is looking like this. We have lots of experience starting the year 2000. We provided support to almost 20,000 persons who are victims of trafficking in persons. And destination countries were Poland, Russia, and inside the country as well, and other countries. But within the last period of time, situation is changing. And one of the countries, leading countries, let's put it this way, people are traveling there, and this is destination country is Poland. But if we talk about last year and this year, last year, 361 persons are victims of trafficking in persons. And this year already 87 persons. And this means people identified, but not really the total number of people who are victims. And 25 persons are victims in the period of war. and destination countries are Poland, Italian case, Greek case, and we are talking about the victims who apply to our organization that is located in Ukraine. And as well, we know that we are getting phone calls and information from other countries that people are victims. We get the phone calls from Poland and Italy, and we referred people to the respective countries. They were not willing to return back. Or maybe they are from the regions that are still dangerous in Ukraine. So what are our actions? We have hotline and that deals with trafficking in persons, and this hotline is operational since 2006, and we were getting phone calls, and lots of calls were coming because information was changing all the time, and we tried to provide more or less relevant support and to provide them information how to cross the border, what kind of documents are required, because at the beginning of full-scale invasion, just situation was changing, what kind of programs are available, and countries participating in this, and what kind of organizations are helping the Ukrainians, how to avoid trafficking in persons, and so on. And as well, we have developed this hotline to include more people in these activities. And we developed the chatbot, and people were able to ask hotline operators what should be done in this particular situation, how to help the relatives. And as well, citizens of the third countries can utilize this hotline as well. There is information available in English. And we are concerned. I have only 3 minutes left, so I'll be brief. Last year, in the summertime, we were doing the study how the war have affected vulnerability of our population. And more than 20 million people have lost their income. 20,800,000, 16 million plus have lost their job. More than 15 million people have partially or fully lost their living accommodation, their housing. More than 8 million people are not able to buy basic stuff, basic things. What we can see, people who are staying in the country or who are leaving the country, they had some funding available, but they actually becoming now more vulnerable because they are looking.
Як всередині країни, так і за кордоном. І зараз ситуація така, що знову ж таки, то, що ми бачимо, виїжджають тільки жінки, що теж є ризик, скажімо так, тому що люди виїжджають до країни, шукають житло собі і також шукають роботу. Ну і знову ж таки, є ситуація, я думаю, що всі це знають, що люди отримують допомогу, але потім вони не знають, як правильно користуватися, тобто чи можуть вони, наприклад, за кордоном бути працевлаштовані, а що робити, щоб соціальні виплати, наприклад, щоб вони продовжували отримати. І якщо люди вирішують працевлаштовуватися неофіційно, частково вони так і роблять, потім є великий ризик, що вони можуть
unofficially, they can be in the situation, they are facing the risk of trafficking in persons. And then the risk is that they are responsible for that and they are unable to solve it. And people are returning back to Ukraine. And we have cases of victims of trafficking in persons, and we're helping them. And last year, it was a national campaign on combating trafficking in persons. And lots of phone calls to our hotline. And our partners receive phone calls from our partners from NGOs, and we are helping people. We are working not only in the field of overcoming and combating trafficking in persons, but as well, we are helping people in case these people are exploited and faced violence, whatever. And this year we are planning a new campaign in the summertime to make sure that people will be able to get information about safe migration, how to be protected, and how to get help, and where. And then information about border crossing, about necessary documents for kids, for adults, and where to go and where to appeal. That's it from me. Thank you. I tried to be brief. In case you have any questions, I'll be happy to respond. Thank you for being brief. And it was information intensive. And we have online participant as well. Andrzej Litvinsky, mission, EU mission on border support, Moldova and Ukraine.
So I guess the floor is mine. Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes, perfectly.
Okay. It's a great pleasure for me and for Mission UBAM to participate in this conference, during which there is the discussion on the challenges and threats faced by the people crossing the border and the identification of priorities for cooperation between authorities to reduce stress of people affected by the war while crossing the border. I've prepared a short presentation related UBAM activities and defined risks. And in the end, I will share with you issues that, according to our observations and experience, caused some problems, challenges for the people and at Ukrainian-Moldovan border. Before presentation, I would like to briefly introduce myself. My name is Andrzej Litvinsky. I've been head of UBAM office in Ukraine for more than 3 years, but my roots are Polish border guard, where I dealt with border surveillance, border checks and professional development of Polish BG employees more than 30 years. Thank you. And now I'd like to display my presentation. On the basis of a memorandum of understanding and agreed between European Commission and governments of Ukraine and Moldova, UBAM objectives have been defined and focus on the 5 lines of the action listed in the slide. And it can be defined as follows. Sustainable development of border management and adjustment of procedures to the EU standards, provide the condition for efficient serving the legitimate needs of people and support economic development while increasing regional security. And since the beginning, I mean from 2005, UBAM has been at the center of the supporting border management reforms and custom policy in the region of Moldova and Ukraine. In the current mandate, UBAM has focused on the 3 main priorities. The first pillar contributing to the settlement process in Transnistria by supporting the development and confidence building measures and approximation of legislation and procedure in customs, trade, transport, and cross-border management. Unfortunately, due to the war, the scope of matters has been frozen, and our activities mainly concern the monitoring of road cargo transport from the perspective of the administrative lane on which Moldovan Customs Service operates. The second pillar is related to ensuring the full implementation of integrated border management at the Ukrainian-Moldovan border by implementing IBN concept. We're encouraging and cooperation between all entities involved in border management to improve communication, information exchange, and mutual understanding between border services. And the last but not the least is the help and support of Moldovan and Ukrainian authorities in combating cross-border crime more effectively. And considering the idea of today's panel, I would like to draw your attention to the scope of our activities for the moment, as it is also associated with the main challenges in terms of threats observed of the common Ukrainian-Moldovan border and the risk for people crossing the border. As regards the third pillar, combating cross-border crime, UBAM observes and monitors the phenomena of the criminal threats occurring at the borders, not only at Ukrainian-Moldovan border, but also the other borders of this part of Europe, which affect the stability, economy, security of both countries. Based on observations and the request of the partners, we initiate or intensify dialogue between law enforcement agencies responsible for maintaining stability, security, and economic development of the third countries. As a result of joint discussions, we propose, support, and even organize activities that increase the ability of our partners to support quickly, precisely, effectively to such threats. At this point, I would like to mention a few of our initiatives against specific threats on the common border, and mainly the Task Force Tobacco meetings. It is an annual undertaking and discussion forum for ongoing analysis of tobacco products trading, in particular the shortcomings in the control system of overproduction, counterfeit cigarettes, and tax avoidance. The last meeting held at the beginning of November last year, we discussed illicit tobacco market in the context of war in Ukraine, joining the representative from law enforcement agencies of Ukraine, Moldova, Poland, Romania, and EU agencies like OLAF, SELEC, and Frontex, as well as from the private sector. As working group meetings, the initiative to establish this group came from the representative law enforcement agencies of both countries. And important issue in this establishing of the group was also Transnistria's region and its stocks of weapons, ammunition, and explosives. UBAM supports this working group, which serves as a platform for exchange of information and experience, threat assessment, prevention, detection, and investigation of illegal movement of weapons. In this year, even the last week, the sixth meeting was organized, during which we focus on assessing the threats related to the arms trade in Europe, in particular emphasizes of the availability of weapons as a consequence of the war in Ukraine. Experts from international institutions and law enforcement agencies from Moldova and Ukraine, and from law enforcement agencies of EU countries neighboring Ukraine, Moldova, presented the latest cases of and trends in detection of illegal weapons at the BCPs in the border area. And the last activities like joint operations, ad hoc support, and cross-border investigations, our ongoing response of on the needs and our discussion with partners. We initiate such events to support them in efficient counteracting cross-border crime. It was shortly about our activities and the defined threats at the Ukrainian-Moldovan border. And now I will complete this presentation. And shortly, let me switch off. Yeah. And now, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to, as I said at the beginning, to draw your attention to the following three issues, which, according to our observations, cause some kind of stress for people fleeing the danger of war. And namely, the first issue is the need to coordinate assistance for refugees, preferably by one organization whose mandate, scope of powers, opportunities of cooperation with government bodies, local governments, and other organizations offering assistance to refugees make assistance much more coordinated and harmonized. Even my personal observations concern the situation in 2022 when the refugee received, in extreme cases, contradictory information regarding the possibility of receiving the care and support. The second issue is related the answering group meetings and the feedback receiving from the speakers from various law enforcement agencies indicated that refugees remain very vulnerable to being used to illegal move small arms and ammunition across the border. The phenomenon of carrying weapons while crossing the border or abandoning them before entering the border crossing by refugees from Ukraine was recorded at the border of Ukraine with Moldova, Poland, and Romania. And the last, but not the least, important issue is related divergence of illegal provisions of the two neighboring countries, I mean Ukraine, Moldova, in the field of allowing minors to cross border. According to Ukrainian legislation, a person over the age of 16 may cross the border without a legal representative, while according to Moldovan legislation, only a person over 18 is authorized to do so. Due to the massive influx of the Ukrainian refugee to Moldova, the Moldovan authorities allowed Ukrainians over 16 of age traveling without the legal representatives to cross the border on entry to Moldova. On the other hand, the problem arose when the return of minor Ukrainians to their country. Due to the lack of legal representative, Moldovan border police launched a verification procedure whether the minor is not the subject of trafficking of human beings, which in turn required the involvement of other Moldovan institutions. The situation were indisputable stress for minors. That's all what I could share with you today, considering the very short time to prepare and due to some kind of health issues and other also business matters. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you for the important work you are doing, and thank you for the presentation as well.
Dear participants, do we have any questions with respect to this panel, with respect to combating trafficking in persons, whatever?
У мене комент. Якщо питань немає.
I have a short comment to make sure that people are getting information, not only at the border crossing points. This information have to be available at the train stations, the traffic hubs, whatever. When people think that same laws are operational as in March 22, people were thinking they will be able to cross the border without any documents at all. And second thing, it will be good in case countries, how to put it, neighboring countries that we have borders, they should be able to provide this information not only inside the country. So what is the sense? When I'm crossing the border, I have to understand how I have to cross the border in Hungary. I'm already in Hungary. It makes no sense for me to read it again, once and again. So this information has to be very much sophisticated, very much advanced, and online information via QR codes and hard copies of the documents, and in the region, bordering such and such countries.
Закарпатська область, такими-то країнами, максимальна інформація там. Для того, щоб це, скажімо так, не перевантажувати нашу прикордонну службу також, да? І, в принципі, щоб люди знали і підготовлювалися, якщо вони мають намір, наприклад, поїхати кудись там з метою, можливо, щоб не перебувати в країні, де є війна, а можливо для того, щоб, знову ж таки, ситуація з працевлаштуванням в Україні не дуже гарна, і люди будуть шукати роботу за кордоном. Тобто так, щоб забезпечити їх, скажімо так, більш-менш забезпечити їх права, і щоб інформацію забезпечити їх, щоб з ними не трапилась біда. Тому що це вже є, і якщо ми спостерігаємо, якщо зрівняти, скажімо так, не зрівняти, а порівняти 2014 рік і 2015 рік, була ситуація така. В 2014 році у нас кожен рік більш-менш ми ідентифікували 1000 осіб, які постраждали. Але в
2014 about 1,000 persons. In 2015, we have much less, substantial decrease in. So people are not complaining too much. They are not running around and telling they are victims of trafficking in persons or victims of exploitation. And some people lost their families probably, or wounded. And and some people have entirely lost the whole family and whatever, and people with the minor problems, they are trying not to demand too much. And people who are victims of this, they need to get maximum information to make sure this will never happen.
Thank you for attention. Also, a question from Maria Sinenka. Thank you. I have this kind of question. Okay, so within the last 6 months in European states, gradually they're minimizing these benefits, financial payments given to refugees and those with the additional protection. In France, they cut it a lot, like 130, 140 euros are given per month. In Netherlands, I heard Belgium is announcing that it's a big load for them, a burden. So a question, maybe IOM had this kind of survey how those measures of host states, how these decisions, are affecting the human trafficking cases increasing, if there is any interrelation or connection between these. Okay, I'm not ready to say. I never heard of that kind of survey or a study. No, there wasn't any. But this is obvious. What we see, it's pretty logical, I would say. People lose jobs, people are losing abroad, these social benefits and payments. They don't know where to go to work and employ. In different countries, different legislation, there are nuances, and people will search for it. And it makes them vulnerable. Yes, we have it. Like, it's there. Even since March 2022, we've had calls for a hotline incoming calls and messages received that people suffered from it. And now our foreign missions also get information that like a woman with a child alone in different countries, we had those cases and have it. But we are responsible for our statistics. This may be a good idea, by the way, just to check, like in other countries. Unfortunately, saying that many know, to me it seems. People are not sure, they're not confident. Okay, if they get this temporary permit to live in the country, and they will say that they should be blamed for violating these rules and got some unofficial shadowy job to make some money. They will be afraid to ask the state institutions and agencies, even the NGOs, because they will be told like, okay, you violated the rules, you should return home, you know? This is like a double-sided sword. Okay, this is the situation when people, they understand they have to work, but at the same time, they don't know how to settle that and where, and language issues. I can tell you that even in Ukraine, we have kids, you know, who suffered from it. Kids right now are trying to help parents somehow to provide for, you know, if they have problems like mom or dad are injured. Different problems are there. But the situation is that kids like 16-year-olds, 13-year-olds trying to work in cafes, 13-year-old girl was working in a cafe, 16-year-old boy, you know, students, even the high school graduates, they try to make some money to help their parents if they have, I don't know, younger siblings, because kindergartens are overwhelmed. This is like a whole bunch of problems. And let's say this is a tragedy, of course, and we have to, as the border guard service said, they left, I guess. I guess they did. We need to have maximum information. Still, how to provide for yourself, how to get some guarantees, you know, the same information, like where to ask for help if something happens, who can help, and who can actually help, not to have 25 referrals. Because, you know, as it happens, go there and go to here, go here, go here, and it's like a vicious circle and it never ends. And people give a call, nobody helps, but just referring elsewhere, go to other organization, people lose hope. I'll just add that in European states, there are different situations. In big cities, they have more opportunities to employ and get some job. In remote areas and villages, even locals can't find jobs, you know, and with language, people think that you'll do it very fast, integrate very fast, our refugees, but no, it's not that simple. People are living with stress, you know, so how European states are planning to handle this, because this is a problem, a serious one. And it may be related to human trafficking as well. I mean, the support of our refugees, there may be a connection. Okay, we have questions from online participants. Inna Kolisnik, Angela Strada. Good afternoon. Thank you for invitation. It's not just a question and a comment. With a hotline on the basis of our organization to prevent discrimination, human trafficking, and violence, we had a survey organized on the risks of human trafficking, exploitation, violence, to understand what's happening during the wartime. And maybe this will not be an answer, but a comment. Yes, today in many states, social payments and benefits were canceled or minimized. And what our What people say, those who gave calls to our hotline, they say that this leads to human trafficking because it's improper payment for the job, no agreements, no labor agreements are concluded. And what do we see? The war is still there. It won't be over this year, definitely. And many Ukrainian girls and women, they have to stay abroad because they don't have a chance to return to Ukraine, or they maybe lived within occupied territories, or their houses are destroyed and they live in these host families, so with temporary shelters. And what we can see, what we've recently seen, some families use this, or they use their payments and benefits. They control their lives, and there were some cases, we got this from our Ukrainian women, they notified that they want to return to Ukraine and take their kids from Ukraine. The host families of these women provided incorrect information for the state institutions of other countries, and kids were selected to check the information. That's how they are obstructing for these women to return to Ukrainian territory. And women, they don't know what legislation tells, they know nothing, they're not aware, they are not aware of the foreign legislation. They become the hostages of the situation. This is the risk that we actually can see right now. It may become a trend, unfortunately. If we talk of the language barriers, this is the factor when our citizens simply don't know how to protect themselves, and they are the risk category. They can become a risk category. We mostly talk about women today, but I just want to say that men as well can suffer from it, and we have those who suffer from it. Many Ukrainian men who were abroad and who worked abroad before the full-scale invasion, before February 24th, even in February during the first days when everybody was leaving and all the men were just living as well. Right now, these men are staying there illegally and they have to work for less payment just to feed themselves or their families. And there is also a risk that they are afraid to ask for help because they think that they would be deported, they would be forced to be deported to their country, and they won't be able to provide for their families. Another remark I want to give is quite often children are suffering from it. Those who left with some acquaintances or family friends, we know that in the beginning of February, border crossing, it was okay for kids to leave, like with relatives, friends, I don't know, with families who took those kids. And right now there is a risk that those kids, they stay in another country and parents don't know where the kids are. And this is also the reason that kids may get into those situations. They may become survivors of human trafficking, God forbid, but they may. And children are suffering. We've had a couple of cases of bullying already. Ukrainian kids are bullied by foreign kids. And this is a risk as well for kids to suffer from. They may be exploited. They may become victims of human trafficking. This is like the key thing that I actually want, because we can talk for a long time about it. And a lot of facts are there. And we really want to help. Another thing to mention is what we observe in February and within the 2022 countries created these hotlines for Ukrainians with Ukrainian speaking channels and lines where our refugees were getting support, to get any type of support actually. What we see right now, so many Ukrainian channels and lines were closed. And the language barrier leads to lack of information and lack of support provided. Thank you. Yes, a question from Ms. Kravchenko, representative of Source of Hope NGO. Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. Upon the occasion, first I'd like to express gratitude to organizers for inviting us because the topic is really important for our organization that we discussed today. Another gratitude goes to International Organization for Migration. With their support, we managed to take effective measures to prevent and counter human trafficking and exploitation. And I have, it's not even a question. I want to respond to comments given by Ms. Irina Titarenko on the importance of preventive activity. And I fully agree because, yes, our organization is not working directly at BCPs. We are involved in a different way in prevention of risks related to human trafficking and exploitation. In the process of, we've been involved in the process of IDP supporting since the first days, but we've been supporting IDPs not in humanitarian aspect, but with information. We had individual group events for preventive work. We were telling people about how to cross the border, the rules and standards. Our beneficiaries got some primary legal aid. We were distributing these handouts with some useful information, some contacts where you can go, not only in case if you already are a victim, but to ensure prevention, because Vinnytsia, especially the first weeks of war, Vinnytsia was then a transit hub, a transit point where people came, they stayed overnight, and then they moved forward. And quite often, they left abroad then. So we definitely provided them information support. Leaflets were given, leaflets with some phone numbers, and we gave these links to security insurance resources where they were able to read about the rules to cross the border, safe employment, both in Ukraine and abroad. And it's really important. And that's how our organization is joining the risk mitigation measures. And of course, if a person already, unfortunately, has become a victim of human trafficking, our function is to detect. And I also want to agree with what Ms. Irina said, that definitely people have huge problems with self-identification. It never happens almost that person comes and says, okay, help me because I am the victim of human trafficking. It's very rare. Huge role is, it's more about talking to person, establishing the trust. When you talk to person, you may actually detect those facts that confirm that a person may potentially suffer from human trafficking. Only in discussion. So to support the idea that we need to do more of that before the person goes to the border crossing point. Thank you so much. A brief comment, please. Thank you so much, Ms. Inna and Irina, because we mentioned two important topics. We spoke of these Ukrainian lines. They're not active abroad. It's really hard to find any consultation in Ukrainian. It's almost impossible now, or it's quite unique. And at the same time that today, we need to have this preventive activity as well, because when people are running, if they're running away, it doesn't mean that they will become victims of human trafficking now. Even if they got some informational support, even if they get some information about human trafficking risks, then they associate it with that time. Time is moving forward. For example, right now, it's less of information in Ukrainian abroad. At our sessions, will people think about now, this moment? When you tell them, please be careful, they say, we don't go anywhere. We don't go anywhere. We are not employed or employed officially. It's okay. But the situation is that right now, they may feel safe. They may be safe. Tomorrow, in a month, it may change. And you have to keep this preventive activity updated all the time. It should be there as well all the time. Different organizations should disseminate handouts. This is a powerful resource for a person to protect oneself. And we should do it permanently. People don't associate it like what they were told a year ago. Now it's a problem as well. It's a risk. They need to know that they may get this consultation. It should be on a permanent basis. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Irina. Okay, we already are pushing the limit with the discussion. So I offer our participants to enjoy their coffee or tea or whatever they want and have some rest. And later we still have 2 other panels on risk groups and infrastructure of the BCPs. So enjoy. Thank you. Your colleagues, so we had this brief coffee break and we still continue the discussion, and it's the 3rd panel, groups of risk, safety and access. Okay, so as it was mentioned already by our participants, kids are the most vulnerable category that requires special attention and protection, preventive measures from civil society and governments, especially during the war, especially when they cross the border. Our next speaker is not only the renowned expert in child protection, but also has a lot of expertise, a lot of practice in supporting kids to cross the border when they're forcibly evacuated to Moldova. So we are happy to meet Mariana Yanachevici, Association for Child and Family Empowerment, AVECOPI, Republic of Moldova. Please.
Hello. Do you hear me?
Yeah, we hear you perfectly.
Thank you. Nice to meet you all. I'm Mariana Yanakiewicz, the Chief Executive of the one of the older NGO from modern Moldova, the Association for Child and Family Empowerment. And as discussed with the organizers, I will share with you some our thoughts, some challenges that we identified in working with refugee from Ukraine children. I have a very small presentation for you, and I will try to share the screen. Do you see the screen?
Yeah, yes.
Super. Okay, just a very short and very small presentation about our association. That's just to give you an impression who we are and how we are working in Moldova. We are already 31 years old, and last year, on 27th of March, we planned to have a very important event, but we decided to not continue with the event due to the war in Ukraine and due to our involvement in refugee crisis in Moldova. We are working now in 28 districts of the country from 32 and in 2 big municipalities in the northern belts and in Chisinau. As well, I have a wonderful staff of 104 people who are working around the country. We are speaking about the children from Ukraine. We are working from different perspectives, and we are collecting and systematizing data of unaccompanied and separated children, but also those who don't have ID or identity documents. We developed 21 child-friendly spaces for children in different districts of Moldova, as well 2 child-friendly spaces in both consulate of Ukraine here in the Republic of Moldova. My team is identifying, is assisting, is referring the cases of unaccompanied and separated children. This is why we have quite 90% of data related to those kids who crossed the border, but who also was left unaccompanied on the territory. My team is providing school support to all kids, but also we are providing a lot of professional support to social workers, to border police in dealing with child protection cases. And we are working on different tools which can facilitate the work with such kids. As you know, Moldova hosted by now a little bit more than 800,000 Ukrainians. And I'm quite sure that you know the statistics. In Moldova, for example, from those people, around 60% was women. And around 20% was kids from 0 to 17. Now we have on the territory around 100,000 refugees, and I must say that starting from 24th of February last year, by now, in this population of Ukrainians who decided to remain on the territory of Moldova, between 48% and 52% are children. To give you a very short impression about who are the children from age groups, if there is differences between boys and girls, I will use the statistic that collected our association, the statistic of those cases assisted by my team. Then there is no big differences between boys and girls. This is a very important issue because a lot of persons is using are saying that a lot of boys, older boys are here on the territory, which is not the truth. The second point, also important, is that the biggest age groups are 6 to 11, 12 to 17. And the very smaller age group are children of 18 years old, completed in 20, we segregated in statistic this figure, who completed 18 in 2023. Sure, the most vulnerable are those who are unaccompanied and separated, and plus those who are without any documents. Speaking about unaccompanied and separated, we are doing a cross-check with the official data of the border police, and we have in our registration 119 unaccompanied children and 801, as I know from the statistics, separated children, directly supported by our association. The data of the border police between 24th February last year and the 15th of October this year it's showing around 830 children who entered our country through the border segment Ukraine-Moldova, and who was either unaccompanied or separated. But this figure is including also kids with some problems with documents. This figure can be less, because we are identifying and we are assisting also the unaccompanied kids who are identified already unaccompanied or left unaccompanied on the territory. Going to the border issue, I want to just underline some very important checkpoints. First of all, Moldova, as you know, Moldova applies the most important principle granted by the Convention from 1951, the access to the territory. Speaking in other words, our state opened the border to all Ukrainian and the citizens of third countries who was fleeing from the war from Ukraine to my country. The first decision of the Commission for Exceptional Situation in the Republic of Moldova, the decision from 24 February 2022, allowed children to cross border from Ukraine to the Republic of Moldova based on the birth certificates or based on the national ID or based on passports. At the same time, by derogation from the law, also the Commission allowed people, adults and children, to cross through temporary closed points, but with the condition of self-declaration. Just to, it was enough just to go to the police officer or to the border police officer and declare that I crossed the border in the data with this kid and so on. Children who crossed without identity documents, according to our internal legal norms, also was granted with the rights to be identified by the General Inspectorate of Migration. Maybe I didn't translate very good in English the process, but the idea is that if a child entered the Republic of Moldova from Ukraine without any document, then the child can be, together with the representative for the guardianship authority, can go to the General Inspectorate of Migration and declare its identity. For the unaccompanied and separated children, but also those who are declaring by themselves that are in risk situation, including risk of trafficking, children can be referred by the police border officers to the representative of the guardianship authority for immediate protection. And maybe you know, we deployed, my country deployed an important mission of the guardianship authority, the presence of the guardianship authority in all cross-border checkpoints. And you can find the representative of guardianship authority everywhere in the cross-border checkpoints with Ukraine, but also with Romania. Main challenges, first of all, unaccompanied children, especially adolescents, 16 years old or more, with or without ID, including also those who are third country citizens. You know, as the representative of UBAM underlined already, on the territory of the Republic of Moldova, those kids, if they are not emancipated, then they do not have full capacity of exercise, then they cannot remain without a legal representative. Then they should be immediately, they are crossing the border, they are allowed to cross the border because the principle of access on the territory is functioning between Ukraine and the Republic of Moldova, but they will be immediately oriented to the nearest guardianship authority. Like, for example, 1 hour before starting my participation to this to your event, I was called by the guardianship authority from Motac, from the north of Moldova, and they asked our support in dealing with a bus of 31 kids from Ukraine who was crossing the border with Republic of Moldova, 6 of them being 16 years old with passport and without any legal representation document from the adult person who was together with this group. They want to participate in an activity here in Chisinau. For these 6 kids, they are now under the supervision of the guardianship authority. Second challenge, children and teenagers going to different sportive competition with unauthorized adults. I give you already the example. Also a group which is it's very small, but with many problems, are those kids or adolescents who are crossing the border but being never documented in their life. And we have different ages. I give you just the extreme example. I have a case of 7-year-old boy born in Ukraine who was never documented before from his birth. The same, we have a 15-year-old also born in Ukraine who was never documented. Another group are the young mothers, young underage mothers with children. Sometimes they are unaccompanied and sometimes accompanied by unauthorized adults. Some of them, and those are mostly from the Roma community, are declaring that they are unofficially married. And being unofficially married, meaning you are not emancipated and you on the territory of Moldova, you cannot, you don't have the full capacity of exercise. Another group are children accompanied by unauthorized adults, having all documents, but no accompanying documents. Children with deteriorated identity documents or deteriorated birth certificate, children with false identity. Sometimes some mother or fathers are using the birth certificates belonging to other children. And such kids are identified also in borders. And another group, we don't have many of them, but it was enough, at least 2 groups from Odessa region, groups of children from child protection and care institution traveling with a single authorized adult, meaning having just one adult who can represent the children. And actually these 2 groups was from a specialized internat, and it was very challenging because if a child became sick, then the person should represent in hospital the child, but also the same person should represent and should be together with the other kids. These are the most highlights the challenges encountered in the border. Speaking about the challenges in the country, what we can find now, and with which type of cases we are managing, which type of cases we are identifying now. Ukrainian parents continue to leave their children unaccompanied on the territory of Moldova. They're leaving alone children, 15, 16 years old. They're living alone children in the country, and they are going back to the Ukraine. This is one situation. The second one, we have cases of separated children in which the carer do not want to declare the situation because they are afraid that will be separated, forcibly separated by the kids, from the kids by the authorities. As usually, we're speaking of the situation where the carers are grandparents or educators from family type children's home. We have some cases of adults with expired document before the war. They was allowed to cross the border to enter on the territory, but they cannot register their children already born here on the territory of Moldova because their identity documents are expired. Another situation are children with birth certificates from third countries who have been in the care of unauthorized adults, citizens of Ukraine, in Ukraine for more than 10 years, and now being in Moldova cannot be represented by this person. And the kids, even the guardianship authority for Moldova cannot apply for these kids for the temporary protection, because the temporary protection is open only for citizens of Ukraine. And this, we have two preeminent cases of such kids who are not citizens of Ukraine. And for them, there should be another identified another form of protection. Another group of kids are unaccompanied and separated, located on the territory of Transnistrian region. We don't have so much information. And when I'm saying we, I'm not referring only to the AVCP Association, but also to the state authority. And we don't know about many things about their protection and their real situation. And another very important issue, and it's a challenge, it's a real challenge here. Sometimes parents or other authorized caregivers do not want to give their consent for the processing of personal data for the kids in care. And in such a way, they are limiting the access to any support and protection for these kids. I know that I have only 10 minutes for my speech. I organized myself to deliver very just general things about that. My association, we are encouraging our partners and those who want to support Ukrainian children just to talk and to talk to us and to ask consultancy and guidance. And if they do not want to discuss with us, just to approach, it's mandatory to approach the guardianship authority, local and territorial, and at least to report the kids who are unaccompanied and separated on the territory. We are in contact with the guardianship authority. We are discussing daily with the guardianship authority. We are discussing with the Ukrainian colleagues. We're from different NGO, from the state authority, and we will continue till the end. Thank you very much. I informed the organizers that I should leave. If you have questions or comments related to my presentation, I will be happy to answer now, if you can allow me for that.
We are grateful for so comprehensive information.
Good evening. I have a question to Mariana in connection with your presentation and when you're talking about communicating with Ukrainian colleagues. In particular, do you have communication on inter-ministry or inter-agency communication, authorities of Moldova and authorities of Ukraine, how to handle situation, how to protect the child that is in Moldova and is separated from the family?
Okay, I will start with the communication, with the direct communication that we have with the Embassy of Ukraine here in the Republic of Moldova, and with the both consulates of Ukraine, the consulate from Belz and from Chisinau. During the first 3 months of the war, we was in direct contact with them 24 hours. Contact. Now we are just approaching them for questions where we don't have any, or we are thinking that we don't have any solutions. Speaking about the communication with the Ukrainian counterparts, with the authority, as I delivered some consultancy work in Ukraine before the war, between 2016 and 18, then I have a lot of contacts, and I'm quite in weekly contacts with different professionals from Ukraine, from the guardianship authority, from the Ministry of Social Policies. We encourage daily our authorities, our Ministry of Social Policy, to inform in some in a little bit more organized manner to inform the Ukrainian counterparts about absolutely all decision changes that are taking place here. Because, for example, even by now, we was aware about the problem of that there will be a problem of the adolescents 16 years old with the biometric passport when they will cross the border, because you are considering them as somehow not adults, but who can travel alone. For Moldova, it's not allowed. Then we will accept everybody here, and we was aware that they will be accepted on the territory, but the guardianship authority should take care about them till the moment the parents or other caregiver will decide what to do next step. But I think the communication was not very well organized between our ministry and the ministry from Ukraine, because this problem still now it's not solved. But then I give you just an example. The bus who is like some hours ago was in Otach having 6 kids, 16 years old, without legal representative. Then it's an example of miscommunication, I can say, from both sides. We are discussing also with a lot of NGOs. I should be very honest. From 27th of March last year, I was appointed by the Border Police, by the Decree of Border Police of Moldova, as a focal point for the Border Police of Moldova. And the first 3 months, my phone was working like 24 hours 7 days, answering only to the border police officer on any cases of a child which was posing some questions related to documentation, representation, and so on.
Thank you so much.
Did I answer?
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much for your contribution to our roundtable. I would kindly ask you to send us your presentation for us to share with our colleagues.
Sure.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your participation.
Thank you.
We continue on to discuss the vulnerable risk groups, and the government session have adopted national strategy on barrier-free development and including digital barrier-free sphere, and for persons with disability. And we have the advisor of the NGO, National Assembly of Persons with Disability. Pavlo Žadan. Dear colleagues, can you hear me? Yeah. I just wanted to ask you to show my presentation. Can you see it? I'm Pavlo Ždan, representing National Assembly Persons with Disability. We have participation of 120 NGOs, and main activity, I'll try to improve something in my presentation. And you can see this organization have been established in 2001, and main task, main objective is to take part in development of government policy with respect to disability persons and awareness raising and so on and so forth. So we are dealing with all the issues for persons with disability, and as well some issues that we are going to discuss here, we are discussing a lot. And within last year, we have organized about 7 different studies for persons with disabilities and persons who were not traveling outside Ukraine. And here is a short presentation of the studies. You can check it out on our website. It's all available in Ukrainian and English. And now you can see the address of our organization. And now I'll talk in more detail about our subject matter. In Ukraine, we have 2.7 million persons with disability and more than 2 million people who are older than 89. And every person older than 75 is considered to be treated like a person with disability, but without the status. So 14 persons are having really situation like disability persons. And our organization we have a lot of NGOs from the very beginning of invasion. We have not stopped our activities. We have organized evacuation of persons from the war-torn area, and we try to facilitate people with disability to leave the territory that is close to military activities and help them to travel abroad. And during all these evacuation activities and providing help, we were facing situations that, unfortunately, within the first days of war, men were not able to travel abroad. I mean, persons with disability. And as well, just persons that were having parents or relatives with disabilities that were helpers were not able to travel abroad. And here is the list of persons. Only people with the special document that are having special permission not to serve in the army, or they have special medical document that they are not valid for serving in the army. And accordingly, our organization has become a bridge. In fact, we were getting the information about all the people who were crossing the border, I mean, people with the disabilities, and we were looking for the authorities, government authorities, that will be able to solve the problems that people with the disabilities, they should not be part of military and medical commission, but they should immediately be allowed to travel abroad, to cross the border. And Ministry of Social Policy is the right body, and within 2-week period, we have developed the first document, approved as of February 13. Actually, February 12, actually, and in accordance with the government decision, Cabinet of Ministers have even expanded the list of persons, allowing people to cross the border. So 2 weeks after the invasion, we were summarizing information, and we were cooperating with the Ministry of Social Policy to develop the necessary amendments in the legislation for people with disabilities to cross the border. Accordingly, we have taken part in drafting of 2 laws and 2 decisions of the Cabinet of Ministers, so-called decrees of the Cabinet of Ministers. At the beginning, only people with the disability group 1 and group 2, and after the law had been passed, persons with disability of group 3 were allowed to cross the border. And as well procedure for family members who cross the border. And with respect to the phrase "not waiting in line," just crossing the border. But to solve this problem, we need to cooperate when we specify the norm that persons with disability, they shouldn't wait in line. And in reality, it never happened. We need to amend it and upgrade. So we have to continue our work in this respect, and the latest changes for persons with disability, allowing them to cross the border. It happened March 10, 2022, and some technical changes were added later.
Виключено, зокрема, довідка МСЕК, як на нашу думку, це достатньо помилково, тому що обґрунтування, що МСЕК відмовляють, це не є достатнім аргументуванням, тому що
a lot of documents, especially medical documents, are forged. Not only these medical documents are forged, as well birth certificates are forged.
Тим, що виключення довідки МСЕК
And medical commission document been excluded, and because of that, when persons are getting pension ID, sometimes it takes 1 or 2 to 3 months to get it. And accordingly, without pension ID, they are not having this ID and they are limited in their rights. From the very beginning, from the invasion day, and complaints when we are talking about border crossing, we didn't see any complaints. At the beginning, we had on daily basis, people were asking for consultations, who is allowed to cross the border, what kind of documents are needed, how material help have to be materialized. And dozens of phone calls were incoming. As of today, I am getting 1 or 2 phone calls per month. And in general, I was doing like two-week Facebook survey. Maybe it was done not very professionally, but people were adding some problems to my list. And these problems may be specified into 2 groups. And this, I just wanted to tell from the very beginning, when we are talking about border guard, there were lots of positive responses, and sometimes there were complaints from our NGOs.
скажімо так, скарги на
And
сьогоднішній день, ну, знов-таки повторюсь, до нас перестали надходити.
now we are not getting complaints.
З одного боку є певний, скажімо так,
From one
розвиток,
standpoint,
певне
it's kind
вдосконалення.
of positive development and improvement of the situation,
архітектурної
and
доступності на пунктах пропуску,
but
відсутність
a lack of access at the crossing points,
санітарно-гігієнічних
a lack
кімнат,
of
відсутність
sanitation and hygienic
доступної інформації,
premises, and lack of accessible information for persons with a disability.
Я впевнений, що воно як було, так і залишається.
Still, it is
Я можливо
problematic.
ще трошки далі зупинюсь більш детально на цьому.
I'll specify this issue in more detail,
Будемо говорити в
or
наступному
maybe we'll
питанні.
talk about this when we'll review the next part of our agenda.
Тобто, по факту,
So, in fact,
сьогодні претензії до Держприкордонслужби, напевно,
complaints with respect to
існують лише в
borders,
частині архітектурної доступності, і то
it's all about accessibility of services or whatever, and they are not really owners, sole owners of the premises. They are sharing it with the customs. But we'll try to work with them additionally. And we have discussed some of the issues. So Diya documents were not accepted. In couple of issues, the issue have been regulated, but still public in their chats, they are still talking about it. Probably it was a good idea to provide information that this is it, end of the story. Forget about it, there is no problem. And we know that these situations have been regulated. One more issue that have been regulated, decree as of March 12th, the border guards were not allowing border crossing in case there is a photo of a mother and last name of the mother, just irrespective of the person who is mentioned in the person with disability. It's mother's last name or father's last name. It's okay. And disabled in the wheelchairs, they are not supposed to leave the bus. I don't know, maybe they'll comment about it. If there is a need for them to get out of the buses, and we have to handle this issue. And one more question. These persons were staying at the border crossing point. They were staying for hours there, and they understood it was kind of mistake. And people were writing about this, complaining. I decided it makes sense to mention. And people were not allowed with the disability to get into border crossing point. People were not mentioning their last names, and actually it's worth mentioning that it's a couple of minutes ago I received information that so people have to tolerate persons with disability. So people with the in the wheelchairs, they not only have problems with the movements, but they have some psychological and psychiatric problems. and even the mentioning that this person is disabled. And there was initiative from the First Lady, Ukrainian First Lady, barrier free, that it's all there, it's all mentioned. We have to tolerate this, and governmental authorities, they are about this issue, and probably it's worth paying attention to border guards, to look at this issue and to study some document with respect to treating and not using the wrong words when you are dealing with the persons with disabilities. And one more problem with respect to crossing the border. Really, we have lots of documents in the list, but
still, some do depend on, let's say, still the bureaucracy is there. The medical commission, certificate, exclusion from the list, I told you. Since the moment when we establish disability and the certificate is given till the person gets the pension ID, it may take like a month, even like half a year sometimes may have. So in fact, a month or half a year for this period, the person will not be able to cross the border. Even within this short period of time, the pension fund had twice these problems with printing the IDs. There was no laminated film or something like that. They could do it technically, and templates and cards. There was a problem with it. Even now, it is a problem. I don't know what's the problem and if it's regulated. Those cards, which were at the same time the pension ID. So the MOH initiative with excluding the commission certificate, I guess, it's wrong. We think this is not the best step. So the pension IDs I mentioned, and state benefits and payments, which are based on average monthly income. Some payments, when you get these do allow you to go abroad. It depends on the average monthly income. So if the person basically is taking care of other person and at the same time getting some income established by the state, in fact, because of that, they simply can't go abroad. It's not a problem of the Border Guard Service. It's the Ministry of Social Policy, because the legislation tells us like that they wanted to save money with these payments, that are given to people, but in fact, what they get in practice, because of the war, these people lost the opportunity to leave because of that. So between the first two and the third decree on state border crossing, disability, and now there is an opportunity for people with disabilities, relatives of those people now get the chance to go abroad and leave the foreign country without people with disabilities, but on the condition that people with disabilities will be registered in the consulate or diplomatic mission in consulates of MFA. Unfortunately, we received information that the certificates on consular registration were not issued. People simply told, okay, nobody's going to give you the certificate. So a wife or a husband of a person with disability were forced to take this person with disability and leave abroad. For example, no, to return to Ukraine because they had some issues related to property, maybe during a year, they may have some problem with the apartment, and then go back again with the person. Another problem that we have, and we've actually had this official request sent to the Vice Prime Minister, when there are single people and these people are immovable, they don't move, or they have limited movement, like using wheelchairs or other tools, and they have a wish to go abroad, but because they don't have relatives and nobody is their guardian, let's say they don't have the support. So there are no people who, no services which would say yes and help these people to leave abroad. Even if there are places for these people abroad in other countries, in foreign, I don't know, organizations, if those organizations already can host them and take care of them. We offer to regulate this issue, establish a mechanism. Unfortunately, state power bodies just gave us a letter and said that, okay, we had an opportunity, but in fact, there is no such opportunity. Another specific opportunity and problem is that, let's say, again, about the disability, the families with many children. Before the older child reaches the 18, but when there is a child disability, there is a conscription immunity like for only half a year. So we had this information from another family. When a father of a daughter with disability, he was given this immunity only for half a year. For him, it doesn't make sense to leave for half a year because, again, returning to Ukraine, person with disability required treatment, and they are still looking for certain solution. Our organization last year was contacting the cabinet of ministers when an initiative. We saw in official announcements that there was Pavlo, I'm sorry, but maybe we'll put it in the last discussion because, yes, right now. Thank you. Thank you. You wanted me to be brief. I tried. I had this attempt. Thank you still for the information. Okay, we would like you to share the presentation with our participants of the roundtable. And now we open the discussion. Ladies and gentlemen, if you have questions or Daria Sidranka, League of Strong. Thank you. I'll be very brief. Just want to stress on two issues. Last year, we provided services to people with disabilities and their families during evacuation in the wartime with two partners organization. One provided legal aid, another hotline consultations. With the help of these sources, we had approximately 1,000 requests on border crossing issues. First big request to help with documents. Second big request about getting information. And in general, if right now we'll take a look like where you can get information about border crossing, it's still a big problem. Because first thing, they print some information on images, but those people who have visual impairments, they can't use screen readers for it. So on the one hand, yes, it simplifies the work for people who are, let's say, healthy and perceived properly, but at the same time, we forget about another category, impairments. Secondly, is plain language. We communicated with Social Protection Fund for people with disabilities. Quite often, the information for their target audience is they use just excerpts from laws. Even if a person has like special degree, it's hard to understand that language. We understand that people with disabilities, they don't have special education. We have people with intellectual deficiency and they can perceive the text. Okay, if we use plain, simple language, it's different. For people, it's hard to get information. Therefore, when we were processing legal requests and other requests, it's how you explain it in plain language. Which documents you need, where you can get those, what should be there in the documents, and so on. Second block, physical accompanying of people at the border with disabilities. We have to understand that disability is a very broad notion, and visible and invisible that may be. Even if it's invisible to the eye, these people require help. Some people need, for example, people may have some medical equipment attached to their bodies, and this is invisible, and they can just stand in a queue for 6 hours because they have that equipment. And it's hard for them. This way is too hard for them. People with grave disabilities, when they are not moving and they require additional equipment for breathing, I don't know, various tools and devices. For them to cross the border, they need support of a third person, third party, physical company. And this issue is really relevant because we started getting requests that people want to return. They're afraid to return because when they remember how they crossed the border in spring, all that horrible route, but will not touch the transport, but the procedure itself, waiting for hours, like, you know, it's just two key problems. Just concluding, I want to mention that quite often when we prepare information, distribute it, on one hand, we have deadlines, we are in a hurry, a lot of work. On the other hand, quite often we don't even think that sometimes for people it's really hard to perceive information as we used to. Still, we have to think about it because we don't know what expects us tomorrow, what's there, you know. If maybe we can become the part of that group, nobody knows. Okay, Daria, thank you for underlining as physical barriers to be eliminated and informational. Andriy, you want to say something? Thank you. I'll start with the presentation because we had so many stones thrown at us. The first is that the letter was presented. At night on February 24th, the letter was written. We were typing it when nobody was answering the phone calls. We are not specialists when it comes to people with disabilities or some socially unprotected categories. We are not the specialists. What we could do based on Article 23. It acted for 3 days, it was functional for 3 days, then it was cancelled, but it's a very popular letter. It's everywhere in the internet. I changed my phone number, work phone number, because of that letter. I did. When people are forced to go out and quite often there's consular registration, why everybody forgets that in Ministry of Social Policy, together with NGOs, why they established this concept that obligatory consular registration. Why is it there? Because after the decree was updated and when they allowed to accompany people with disabilities, I'll say it harsh, but person with disability has become like an object, a goods. This person was just sitting and everybody were pushing the person here and there. It's like, okay, you leave. Okay, you go there, you establish the person, support the person. MFA knows about it, controls. Please register in a consulary. Do it. And that's why we had so many problems. And that's why we had the situation. People with disabilities had that situation because of this. Again, we had this case, Krakivets BCP. There was a person in a wheelchair, was made to get out of the car. We had a video made, we had a meeting. There was a son-in-law accompanied this woman, and for son-in-law not to bring the documents, he decided to put the woman out of the car. You know, it's really like a high pavement there, it's like a little bit of, and it wasn't very convenient for this person. Yes, we did not refuse, but it wasn't our fault. In BCPs, you can't leave the car. Our employees take the documents by themselves. We don't have this one stop shop as yeah. We need to merge this in, but we need to merge this, but infrastructure does not help us. That's why we had these issues. The letter worked for 3 days. It was like in effect, and then I guess we added people with disabilities, second and first type. Why these? Because they were mentioned in the law on mobilization. And due to the fact that nobody then helped us, and we acted according to Article 23. We couldn't expand our scope of competence. Thanks to NGOs and Ministry of Social Policy, later, this first decree, maybe it was not perfect, but there were updates, and a little bit we managed to regulate it with the kids and grave cases, people with disabilities, accompanying issues, and the rest. Something that we managed to regulate then. Thank you. I just want to say, colleagues, please don't take my words as an insult. You did. It was the opposite. I tried to be very tolerant. And I really wanted to say that we were so grateful to you. But also, we have some flies in the ointment. Sometimes there's also always a reason to criticize. But my speech was not that negative as you maybe perceived it. With the certificates from the consulate, I'd like to clarify, these are not issued. It's not your problem. They're simply not issued. Okay. We have a couple of cases when foreign consulates, they did not issue these certificates, but offered to make a copy of foreign passport, put a stamp or something, but it's not stipulated by decree, then you understand that this would not work. Okay, thanks. Igor? I'll be brief. I'll comment information. Thank you for raising this issue. First thing, that documents belonging to people with disabilities, well, this is the second category, the second biggest category of forged documents. Just for you to understand, every day in Western segment, 6,000–7,000 men are crossing it of conscription age, 6,000–7,000. Out of these, 1,000 people with disabilities. 1/6 are people with disabilities. And 200–300 with accompanying persons. Yeah. So if we subtract 3,500, the drivers of trucks and volunteers, this is the second category that crosses the border the most, so most often. Since the beginning of the year, only in Western segment, 87,000. Like 87,000 approximately, within 4 months. 19,000 of accompanying persons of conscription age. Those are people who were not taken by the conscription centers. Well, so many forged documents, even not the medical commission certificates, because we stopped working with them, but another documents like the care confirming certificate. There is no specific template even for it. How can we establish that this is a forged document? We need to have an original one. We compare the original one with what people show, and only then we say it's forged. And when there's no template of protection, how can we? So one person disability, family, yeah. Okay, bringing your husband, son-in-law, second son-in-law, and all the families take. But it was mentioned that there's one category nobody can take out, the single adults, but they even get married. They don't just leave, they get married. With huge difference, we can see our inspectors tell that you don't even imagine. This category is used so much and abused, you know, by men just to leave Ukraine. And we have letters from regional territorial conscription centers. They refer to legislation, military registration norms. They tell us, you let people with disabilities cross the border after they show us their medical documents. So the legislation does not stipulate this, but the letter that was demonstrated, it shows the second category, those who cannot be conscripted, especially the category of second and first type of disability. These people cannot go to armed forces. But still, they had to go to these conscription centers, confirm this right, and be excluded from the list based on certain articles. If this is not done by them, it later became an obstacle for them to cross the border in February last year. This is like the problem that we have, all the problems that we actually have. Thank you. I'll just tell about the figures for the state border in total. In 3 months, 99,348 cases of border crossing, people with disabilities, okay? 99,000. It's the statistics for the current year or the last one as well. For 2023, we didn't prepare the 2022. It's really hard. We don't control this. We just set this task to prepare for this meeting, but we actually don't control the 99,348. Yeah.
And Mikola?
Mikola. Thank you so much for invitation. Микола Надлучний, Luhansk Association of Organizations Persons with Disabilities, head of NG Union. Regarding the State Border Service, thank you so much. We do appreciate your support. Since the start of full-scale invasion, we've been cooperating. So many people were evacuated. There is no misunderstanding, full cooperation. Some individual issues may rise, but it's not important. Regarding the certificates and IDs, yes. The certificate I have, look, it can be forged easily. I get it in my hands. I hold it. And we talked about it with the Ministry of Health and Ministry of Social Policy for these IDs, maybe with European template. The drivers who use parking lots abroad, parking lots for people with disabilities, they are fined with a huge amount of money. So this is really relevant. I had this remark, so we had a conversation in the couloirs that we have this quite an unpleasant example. As Pavlo mentioned, the ethics of communication and tolerant communication. Sometimes border guard employees, they say, oh, I am now making decisions on your destiny, like something like, you know, border guard service is the face of the state, you know, and employees must stick to ethics and communicate properly and be aware of that. Be tolerant. We had complaints that unfortunately very harsh language is used and the behavior is improper. I'm not speaking about people with disabilities, but this is like the general impression. Thank you. Yes, we have this situation, and we don't have like okay, we don't have people with a bunch of degrees sitting there. Some people come like graduating school, like 11 years of secondary school and start working. I don't want to insult my people, but okay, those people who used to be juvenile delinquents, maybe they try to change and become part of the service. Okay. We can't control everyone who are standing at the border. You know, it's just we can't keep finger on the pulse of the cases. I mean, it's really hard to monitor. Diya Luzan, protection cluster co-coordinator. The question to technical question to border guard service on statistics that you actually presented. Is there registration of kids aged 16, 18 who leave autonomously abroad, who are allowed to leave Ukraine independently? Do we have registration for unaccompanied kids leaving Ukraine? Is there a chance to identify the number of kids aged 16, 18 who left alone and aged under 16? Okay, the registration So we have only one list registering those who cross the border. As far as I understand, there is a chance to distinguish this age category. It will take a long time, but accompanied, unaccompanied, then no. Those kids who are accompanied have a separate line, additional information, and it tells on basis of which documents, but we need to, we can search. You need to know the surname, first name, yeah. Just saying Ivana, born in 1995, well, the database will not search. We have the registration, but need to give specific data to search. We know about this problem, and we are in the working group on missing kids, and yeah, we know. The question for the about the kids. We have a lot of situations when kids are unaccompanied and leaving the country. In many cases, it's a different problem. According to civil code, a child age 16 and over can go abroad independently. In Moldova and other countries, starting from 18 years old. We have a draft law right now to regulate this age issue, but 16, 18 category, yes, we have this problem. For us, it's not a problem. We act according to legislation. But later it becomes a problem for kids. We're trying to inform, but using our channels, but still, this issue is not regulated, and in media, I guess we need, in social networks, we need to distribute this information, because the child, before the legal representative comes, the child is sitting in Krakivets, BCP, before a representative comes, or a guardian, or I don't know, a person authorized by parents or parents themselves. Yes, this is a problem. Tell me, we'll be sitting there in Ukrainian part of the border. No, in Polish, not in Ukrainian. We let children go because it's according to the law, but in Europe they have problems. I'll ask a question, then do you explain correctly? Does the employee of State Border Guard Service explains that this minor will have problems and there will not be a chance? Yeah, but we have a problem. Many people watch TikTok and read Telegram channels. Yeah, this is a problem. The last news that's when you reach 17 years old, you can't leave. This is a global problem. We are thrown with requests. Why 17-year-olds? Why Ukrainian citizens of that age cannot leave? And second news, doctors, nurses must be registered. Like for 30 years, they've been in that registration database. My sister is a medic. She has even the rank of lieutenant, but it doesn't mean that it's a prohibition. People don't listen to what they're told, and then it's late. Okay, tell me, please, in cases when the State Border Guard Service refuses to the accompanying persons who take care or accompany the person with disability, does the State Border Guard offer options to person with disability or low mobility person for this person to cross the border? Or you just refuse? Accompanying person and this person with disability has to return. What is the destiny of this person with disability? It depends on who is accompanying. The person is using one's own transport and the accompanying person is a passenger. The passenger is taken away and the person can move further if on the train, in the bus. Person with disability, if vice versa. Okay, and is it maybe a limitation? Are you limiting the capacity of person with disability to cross the border? Maybe the state has some commitment on giving the option for this person to enjoy the right according to the border crossing rules. Look, Igor with all state power bodies, with NGOs, protecting kids and people with disabilities. We don't have these problems of people stucking there, you know, being stuck there. When Kharkiv, Odessa, when they evacuated people, NGOs evacuated people, 40 buses were there in the line, people with disabilities, they all were, we had no problems. The same persons with disabilities, we had problems, they had problems with documents, we took the responsibility, we allowed them to go. But for someone to get stuck at the border, I don't remember. I'll take a minute. I can tell you none of those cases. Interests of people with disabilities were taken into account. Since February 24, all the cases, sometimes we made decisions beyond the law, let's say, but in the interests of people with disabilities. But we do not need to model it. We do not humiliate people with disabilities. We are not sadists, okay? Interests of people like minors. Coming back to previous question, when we had the first signals from NGOs that kids in Poland are taken from BCPs and sending to some centers, accumulating centers, we did not wait for any official information. We made decisions instantly. We took the responsibility. Without accompanying people, you gave me the statistics on unaccompanied kids. It's horrible. In Western segment, we never left kids if we were not sure that there's an adult accompanying this kid, or some other alternative is there, you know. Horrible things were given.
So basically, without somebody who will come with them, I don't remember such cases. Really, so we are not leaving people alone. No way. Or with outsiders, with people they didn't know, with some sentence like this. So, neighbor, take my neighbor away. Just something like that. It never happened. In our databases, just to be checking it out. We are identifying just the supporters and helpers, definitely. And so only parents, like grandfather, grandmother, and so on, brotherhood, plus, and so on. So we are clarifying all the situation. Thank you. In case you have any questions. So we are starting our final part. Services and infrastructure and border crossing points, DCPs. First part is the current situation, and senior analyst or and she will present the results of study, and the study results were identified and monitoring have been done September 22 to this year. And thank you, Ksenia. Dear participants, thank you for coming. This is the last panel session, and we are going to be really quick. The results of our monitoring, thanks to actually UNHCR and charity organization and charity NICA. We have collected data, how the border crossing points were organized and corresponding territories. This monitoring happened in Brodnice, Ugriniem, Порубне, Староказача, Лужанка, Чоп, Ужгород, Шенгінь, Рава-Руська.
Це територія таких областей, як
And
Вінницька,
this
Львівська,
is
Чернівецька,
Vinnytsia,
Закарпатська та
Lviv,
Одеська.
Chernivtsi, and
Власне,
other
на екрані
regions.
ви зможете побачити
Here you can
ті
see the
результати
results.
на предмет
When we are
доступу
talking
до
about
інфраструктури,
accessing
до
the
тих
infrastructure,
умов, які
when we are talking
повинні бути
about
для
whatever the proper
гідного перетину
conditions
кордону.
have to be
Власне,
created
щодо
for
доступу
decent
до
border
води, до
BCP,
питної води,
access
вода наявна
to
в достатній
potable
кількості
water
тільки на 2 МПП.
only
Ви можете
into
побачити це Грушів та
BCP,
Старокозаче.
Грушів
На
and
інших міжнародних пунктах
Староказачів.
пропуску вона
The
відсутня.
rest
Зверніть
BCPs
увагу,
have no
перша
potable
графа
water,
– це саме
drinking
питна вода
water.
на МПП та перед МПП,
This is the
на
first
так
line
званих зонах обслуговування,
in
які,
the service
як ми
area and
вважаємо,
the
в Україні
BCPs.
потребують суттєвого
And we need
удосконалення.
substantial improvement.
Наступне щодо технічної води.
Technical
Технічна вода в
water.
достатній кількості наявна
Technical
тільки на 2
water is
міжнародних пунктах
available
пропуску
only
і
at 3
відсутня на
BCPs
9.
and
Стосовно
is not there
санітарно-гігієнічних
at
умов,
9
а саме наявності санітарних
BCPs.
блоків.
Sanitation
Тут
blocks, so-called
туалети наявні
toilets,
тільки на 4
are
пунктах
available
пропуску
only
міжнародних та перед
4
5
BCPs
міжнародними пунктами пропуску.
and
В цьому руслі
close to
ми
5
дуже вдячні
BCPs.
УВКБ ООН за те,
And we are
що
extremely
вони
grateful
допомагають
to
в облаштуванні
UNHCR
територій перед
for
міжнародними
helping
пунктами пропуску
to organize the
в багатьох
territory
сферах інфраструктури.
close to BCPs
Стосовно,
when we are
ми
talking about
бачимо, що
infrastructure.
відсутні
And we
санітарні
can
блоки
see
на
that
самих МПП та
sanitation
перед
blocks
5 міжнародними пунктами
are
пропуску.
not there.
Стосовно вивозу сміття, як
When
ви
we
бачите,
are
ситуація тут
talking
краще.
about the
Здійснюється вивіз сміття,
taking trash
є
out
наявні
of this
сміттєві
area.
баки на 7
So trash
міжнародних пунктах
containers
пропуску
are
та
available
лише
in 7
перед
BCPs
4 міжнародними пунктами пропуску.
and in the area
На
close
всіх
to
інших
BCPs only in 4
вони
cases.
відсутні.
In the rest,
Стосовно
we don't
умов
have anything.
очікування та цивільного захисту.
With
Мова
respect
йде про розтягне
to
сидіння,
civil
про
protection
захист
and
від погодних
as
умов
well
та наявність
simply
пунктів обігріву.
heating areas
Власне, місцеве
and
сидіння наявні на
protection
7
from
МПП та відсутні на
rains and
6.
whatever.
Також
So what we can see
може
is
захиститися від
that
погодних умов, дощу та снігу, наприклад,
protection from rain
зимній
and
період лише на
snow
5 міжнародних пунктах
is
пропуску.
available only in 5
Стосовно пунктів
BCPs.
обігріву, то тут теж
Heating areas,
попередні спікери говорили про це, що
it was
вони
mentioned
наявні
already,
тільки на 3 міжнародних пунктах
only at 3
пропуску і
BCPs.
відсутні на 10.
And 10 BCPs,
Стосовно
they
умов
don't have it.
очікування та цивільного захисту,
With
який став
respect
дуже актуальним в
to
період
civil
повномасштабного
protection
вторгнення, то тут ви
area,
бачите укриття на випадок повітряної тривоги
shelter
наявні лише на МПП ЧОП.
only is available in
А
CHOP
система оповіщення про небезпеку наявна лише на 2
and
МПП.
early warning system is available at
Стосовно умов для людей з
3
особливими
BCP.
потребами, то
creating proper
укриття
conditions
задовільне
for
на всіх міжнародних пунктах пропуску,
persons with the special
пандуси та
needs.
інвалідні візки
So
наявні
definitely
лише
the
на МПП ЧОП
wheelchairs
та
are
Грушів.
available in Грушів and CHOP.
Стосовно умов для людей з
BCPs.
особливими потребами на
Proper
предмет персоналу, що
conditions
може супроводжувати людей з
for
порушенням зору, то
people
такий
with the
персонал присутній майже на всіх міжнародних
sighting
пунктах
in
пропуску, окрім 3.
impairment
Також важливим є
is
питання
available in
розташування
most of the
туалетів
areas except the
для
3,
кімнат матері і дитини, які наявні лише на 2 міжнародних
equipping
пунктах
the
пропуску.
for
Тут
disabled
також велика
the
подяка
toilets
управління Верховного комісара ООН
and as
у
well
справах біженців за допомогу
thanking
в
to
облаштуванні таких умов.
UNHCR commissioner.
Власне,
Thank you
стосовно
to them for
моніторингове
creating
дослідження
proper
буде
conditions.
розіслано після круглого столу.
And
Ми напрацювали
this
там рекомендації, які я
monitoring
хочу коротко
study will be
озвучити, тому що
disseminated to you
сьогодні піднімались питання
later
про те,
after
що це питання
presentation.
дуже чутливе,
And this is
бо,
very
як
sensitive
ми
issue.
з'ясували, відсутній
As
орган
we
державної
find
влади, який
out,
буде відповідати за
there is
розробку
no proper
єдиного
body
нормативно-правового акту,
that will be
який
responsible
зобов'яже
for
той чи інший
drafting
орган бути відповідальним за
this
облаштування всіх
legislative
належних
act
умов
to make sure that somebody will be responsible for creating proper conditions at the BCPs. So all governmental agencies, customs service, border guards, and so on, local authorities, to facilitate this issue. We understand that local authorities, they understand their situation, and we recommend to allocate funding from the local budget for maintaining these sanitation blocks. With respect to attraction of the private sector, we recommend to local authorities and humanitarian organizations, for all those who are facilitating and helping to develop service zones. And we'll listen to those who are really engaged in the subject matter. That's it from me. Thank you for attention. And to understand the visions, how to develop infrastructure at the BCPs, Vasil Kayukin is representing Ministry of Communities and Development of Infrastructure. Thank you very much. Let's get back to the very beginning. I have written down and stopping transit with Belarus and supply chain have been changed with respect to Latvia, Finland, and so on. As a result, pressure is rising with respect to Polish BCPs, a lack of transit via Russia. What happened? As a result, we are having some problems to supply our goods to Kazakhstan and Georgia. And as a result, Moldova and Romanian BCPs are overloaded because of blockade of the seaports. Auto transportation is more overloaded. If we are looking at getting the license for international cargo transportation, we have issued 1,602, and next year 11,000 certificates. And with respect to transportation of cargo, with respect to safe and hazardous transportation, and increase in trading with EU countries, 13 million tons in 21, and in 22, the turnover is 16 million tons. And political pressures and pressure in the field of infrastructure. Let's briefly talk about what has to be done. And look at the different BCPs. International cooperation, cooperating with our partners, neighbors, to sign new agreements and changing the and construction of the new BCPs and joint customs control and border crossing control. If you are looking at Poland, at the final stage, we are almost finalizing this agreement with Poland. If you're looking at Hungary and Slovakia, we have started only negotiations about it. And finalizing the reconstruction of the DCP, like Uzhgorod, will be a separate line for cargo transportation and vehicles, or passenger vehicles, and actually as well construction of the new DCPs and roads. Now we are negotiating with Romania to construct new cargo transportation road via Bila Krynica and Diya. Redistribution of transportation flows. Now we negotiate with Lublin and Karpatsky Voyevodstvo. It's like a region in Poland. And with respect to Grushev, Budamysh, high-capacity cargo transportation will be allowed and extending the treatment of this cargo in a most friendly way. And IT solutions, probably you know, electronic line have been introduced, and drivers can in advance stand in line electronically, and as well to extend it to Ravaruska, Krekivets, and so on. With respect to service zones, as well, the work is ongoing to extend the service zones with the minimum requirements, sanitation zones, power, internet, food 24/7. And May 22, you have mailed us comprehensive set of measures with respect to creation of Solidarity Road, and Connecting Europe facility is part of it. Ministry of Infrastructure, together with an Agency of Rehabilitation and international partners, we have submitted application to upgrade the most important BCPs. There are a couple of projects. Yagodin-Drhutsk is one of the cases, construction of service zones and construction of part of the road. That's it. Thank you. With respect to prospects of trans-border relation, Slava Alekska from Lviv Council, she will be talking about Polish credit. So, thank you very much. Thank you for organizing this round table and for raising a very important subject matter. Can you hear me? Yeah. I think that Lviv Regional Council is dealing with the subject matter starting 2021. I mentioned about the main problems. We have lack of infrastructure and a lack of BCPs. But let's look in more detail. Lack of infrastructure is not only about toilets and or proper conditions or decent conditions for disabled. But as well, we have a very narrow roads. So that's why it's almost impossible to get to BCP. And we tried to solve this problem. First, we wanted to create just information zones, but it's hard to get a land plot. So we have allocated some funding for service modules. We plan to install 7 sanitation modules in 2022. We have rehabilitated work in this, and sanitation modules are already established, and we are working on connecting to communication area, and it will be fully operational eventually, and it will be toilets, a room for mother and child, and providing potable water and technical water as well. And pretty quickly, these red crosses will be replaced, and it will be operational. I am pretty happy with the fact that BCPs are going to expand. Krakiev's was introduced last year, but in Lviv region, it's mostly some areas, but some counties are not even connected. In Chervonograd area, only one BCP in accordance with Schengen rules. There should be certain distance from one BCP to another to make sure we have it proper conditions. We have regional initiative to open up one more BCP in Chervonograd County or in Chervonograd district as well.
Потрібно обов'язково відкривати новий пункт пропуску, автомобільний пункт пропуску, а не лише розширювати чинні пункти пропуску.
So we need to introduce new ones, not only to expand the old ones, old DCPs, because when you expand and upgrade the existing BCPs, we have to make the road much wider, and this is pretty costly project. And now about functions and authorities in the area. These BCPs are the responsibility of the agency that is dealing with the upgrading of infrastructure. Unfortunately, the proper conditions are not established. In the neighboring Poland, the local administration of voivodstvo in Poland are responsible for this, and they are responsible for BCPs. Because of some reason, territorial communities, I just wanted to say that, do you feel responsibility just for this? And in most areas, they are not ready to invest.
Власне, чому після таких розмов було прийнято рішення фінансувати ці видатки з обласного бюджету?
We need to fund from the local budget.
Органи місцевого самоврядування не бажають мати пункт пропуску в одному місці, не бажають мати в іншому місці, тому що це логістичні незручності.
Some logistic discomfort exists in case you have visited Shengeni and it goes across the city.
Питання прикордонної інфраструктури, окрім питань тут
border infrastructure, in addition to whatever had been mentioned before, it's a very sophisticated issue and it requires solving lots of problems. And what we can see and what we offer. And all other bodies. We need to develop the strategy. In case we don't have clear responsibility via Poland, and we have priorities and vision, territorial communities will adopt decisions with respect to land cadastre, and the whole area will be in proper shape. And absence of synchronization of local strategy and national strategy will cause some problems in the future, unless service areas are developed. And this takes a lot of time to develop the service areas. Service modules have to be installed to solve the issue before just introducing the proper conditions in general. So we should not delay by waiting for construction of the full-fledged service zones, but at least some modules will be able to solve the problem of the basic needs. And the Lviv Oblast Council and our Lviv military organization, we are ready to support and co-finance and to implement some projects that are really useful to all of us. Thank you, and thank you for a very useful event.